Can you hear us okay? Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. So on the last item, I'm not sure where you dropped the signal, but on this item with the community development fees, the total amount needs, if we need to go back and have them with a figure for our ordinance, because some of the national higher and the local probably more to make sure that so
okay.
we're going to send that document back to staff, and they will ensure that it's compliant with what the motion was last meeting.
Okay.
That's all you need. So,
Orange is possibly for who's going to this semester. We're listed in studying processes that cities use to promote process. Looked at cities in Utah as well as around the country to see what they're doing. For example, presentation. Congratulations, Lauren.
Okay, hopefully like this song, so I can, Excellent. As I was saying, my name is Sarge Schmidt. I'm a student here at BYU, and I've just been interested in working on things like civic engagement for some time. And so I was talking with some people last semester, and they mentioned that I might be able to be involved with some of the council. So Dave's been great with mentoring and sort of showing me where I might be helpful to you guys. And hopefully today we'll be able to talk about a few things that he and I have been looking at in terms of how we can help make city council better connected with people in Provo. And obviously this is a really big question. There's a lot of different directions that this can go. So as you'll see, we looked at a few things and then sort of zeroed in on one or two options at the end here that we would love to talk about with you guys and put some feedback on. So let's talk about just sort of the general overview of what I hope to do. Hopefully this won't take too much longer than 10 or 15 minutes. I know you guys have got a lot to do. All right. So just a quick overview of what we'll be talking about. First, I'm going to be talking about sort of the objectives and questions that the members and I are talking about through the course of the semester, and then I'll talk about some of the main findings of what I've been looking at. First, sort of some possible avenues for the city to get more connected with citizens. Online tools is one place where we started looking at a little bit more specifically at what might be more available. That's one of the avenues that seems most promising to us. And then some examples of potential changes that might happen in that and some other areas. So some of you I remember I sent out an email a couple months ago to council members and some other people who knew something about this, where I said that this is sort of our objective. We want to develop recommendations that we can for any changes that might make that engagement better. So if we can improve citizen access, or we can improve the council's ability to disseminate information, get sort of that two-way communication flowing a little bit better. I think that's going to be a lot better for the people and for you guys, and being able to have that dialogue and be productive as leaders in the city. So with that said, here's some of the questions that we were asking at the beginning. First, how can we disseminate information so that citizens know about decisions? So that's working sort of in the council side as well as the public. How do we get people who will engage to engage earlier? And sort of working the opposite direction from the people who are in the city to city council leaders. What channels of communication can we open or not between citizens and the council? Or how should the council structure public meetings? So again, it's about getting the council and the public to have this sort of two-way information flow that hopefully can get people talking and get more engagement generally in the community. So with that said, we talked about some of you a few different ways that we might be doing this. Through the ways that people's work meetings are used and they're applied to the issues that the public cares about. We talked about the neighborhood program, the local council meetings in terms of public meetings, simultaneous work meetings are running, what's done there, and then also online outreach as a way to get some of this going. So let me just briefly touch on some of each of these, and then, like I said, I'll focus a little bit more on the opportunities for online outreach at the end. So first, with work meetings, here's sort of a summary of some of the conclusions that we came to about some things here. First, scheduling matters. So if we're hoping to get public input or to get information out to stakeholders, being able to do this early and being able to do this at times when people are available really matters. So one goal that would sort of arise from this is that we would want to make sure that stakeholders know early what's happening in these meetings. And you would hope that they sort of take the initiative most of the time, but there often requires sort of a nudge or notification. If there's any way that we can do that, I think that would be really helpful. Second, so in terms of work meetings, full public participation is tricky. We've talked about, I think one topic that was mentioned would be doing sort of call-in options for these work meetings, and there was some sort of concern expressed with that, just in terms of the council being able to continue efficiently with a lot of calls coming in all the time. But this might be something that could be used sort of selectively in order to work with particular people who you want to reach out to and invite particular stakeholders to feedback in the process. So that's there. Those are some ideas for work meetings that we had. Second, to talk about the neighborhood program. So the neighborhood program, from what I gathered in conversations with each of you and some others, has a lot of potential just because it is that most direct connection with most of the people here in Provo. But it also carries with it some of their own problems. Many of them have chairs and sort of other leaders. It's sort of hit and miss in terms of how active they are and how much they're willing to work with people. So figuring out a way to make them a little bit more proactive and accountable would be wonderful, but that sort of is its own project was the conclusion we came to. It's certainly something that we think should be looked at further, but that might require a lot of additional work to sort of structure that and figure out how the whole neighborhood program could be worked on in order to make that more effective there. So that's an idea that maybe we worked on in future research, but we'll leave that for right now. The third option we talked about was council meeting procedure. And yeah, sorry, I should have said this. Please interrupt me if you need to at all, or if you have any questions or ideas, or if I'm misstating the facts in any way. So I'm very much new to this. So sorry I didn't listen to some things that I hope some of you know. So let me continue. In terms of council meeting procedures, this is something that Dave has been working on a lot. And one idea that we sort of floated was that because often the public feels that council members sort of have their minds made up, or they're not really sure what council members are thinking when it comes time for public comment. Often their remarks sort of go in directions that aren't quite as relevant, or they start speaking to things that really aren't to the point, and often council members lose interest, or other things start happening where the real issues aren't being addressed. And so one option that we talked about with this with some of you was having council members sort of give their basic idea of where they stay on different issues before some of the public comments were invited to be made during public meetings. But one concern with that is that obviously, for example, if council members give their opinion and then public opinion is given, and council members are sort of still at where they're at afterwards and vote accordingly, there's sort of this feeling that, well, it doesn't really matter if we comment anyway, and people are just going to, they're not really listening, we can't really change their minds, so why do we even comment? And that sort of negative feeling might get council members just to naturally sort of hedge what they're saying in any case and not really say what they think. So we're trying to think of ways in which...
What was the positive about stating it before?
So the positive of stating it before is that public can sort of speak to the concerns of the individual council members. So if you, for example, have something you would really like to hear about, you say, well, okay, I'm sort of sold on these two ideas, but I don't really buy this particular aspect of this ordinance or whatever it is that we're working on. Then they could, instead of talking about those ideas that you're already sort of sold on and kicking a dead horse, they could speak to exactly what you're worried about. So that would hopefully be one way to do that. But again, there are those concerns. So we thought about one way to do this would be sort of producing a general, not personalized sort of pro and con list for issues for which there's anticipated to be sort of a diversity of public opinion. And that way council members don't have to sort of single themselves out and say, this is what I really care about, and I may or may not be willing to change my mind on this. But the public can know really sort of if they're speaking towards the pro, what are the cons, and be willing to sort of counter those, or vice versa, if they're speaking to the cons of a particular initiative. So I'm going to come back to this in a second when we talk about individual project policy and policy pages and providing these sort of summaries of pros and cons for people to look at. But that was one idea. A couple other options that we thought of here would be prioritizing agenda items. Again, if there are some that you anticipate to be a little bit more divisive, or there appears to be more public comment sort of pending on them. Scheduling, again, talking about scheduling them for times when that might be more accessible for the public, maybe early on in the agenda or during city council meetings or something like that, so that they're able to meet with them more frequently or more availably. The public is able to engage a little bit more easily there. Again, sort of deferring action. This is something I know that has been talked about, but I thought I'd at least mention it. So when there is sort of this public opinion that's very strong, maybe in both directions, instead of making a call then, being willing to defer a little bit more than usual, so that individuals can feel like their voices are heard over the course of another week or two. So And then having, second round of public comments again with sort of these summaries of council opinion or questions that the council has that they would like people to speak to, we think could be helpful in focusing public engagement there. And then finally, online outreach, which is both sort of its own area and a way we've thought of addressing some of these other concerns. And so I want to spend a little bit more time on this, if I may. So first, we talked about summaries of work meetings and council opinion, finding a way in which those could be made public, so that people can be aware of what the council is thinking, what they're most concerned about. These don't have to be long or extensive by any means. They can be bullet point summaries of the 2 or 3 or 4 most important items that you guys consider in meetings like this. Just again, ways for people to sort of see what you're thinking about in quick and easy ways. Often that's how a lot of people are able to get their information. That's how we sort of process these things in sound bites and in quick pieces, so that if they are concerned, then they can get additional information and engage a little bit more. But so there are at least summaries available. The second thing that we thought about was having forums or tools for online requests, either for agenda items or for statuses of an issue that can come from the council. I know that a lot of you do a lot of work just with your constituents individually in terms of answering emails and calling people and working with people on that sort of personal basis. But the hope here is that we can have sort of online tools where anyone can just get on and with a quick form request that something be added to an agenda or be considered as part of the council, or request sort of an update on where something kind of stands without having to sort through, what could be potentially sort of hours of meetings or a very long video or streaming all of this or kind of digging through minutes. Again, just making this, having a little bit more accessibility on there. And what I'm going to be talking about over the next couple minutes is the idea of having policy or project pages as part of Provo City Council's website that can help provide a lot of this information. But first I wanted to talk about just a little bit of what we see other cities doing with their websites and with their outreach this way, what we can learn from them in terms of what they're doing well or in terms of maybe what they're not doing so well. So there's a couple cities that we looked at here. I've got Orem, Lehigh, and Salt Lake City, and then we'll be talking about some others later on. But I wanted to show maybe some examples of what they're doing or not doing, and how we can compare Provo to that and maybe make some additions that could make it better. So Ryan, if you wouldn't mind clicking these links for a second here, if you could do Orem first. Orem is one of the more basic websites. Obviously, their council and city is structured a little bit differently from Provo's, with having the city manager style of things. But they actually don't have a dedicated website for the city council. It's just attached as part of their general city webpage. We can get it to load here. And really what they have is just sort of the basics. So they've got sort of a list of the council members. And then down here, if you wouldn't mind scrolling a little bit, Ryan, they've got in the public information section, if you could click that. They've got here just sort of the minutes and the agendas and the calendar for the city council. And once you go in there, it's just sort of a search tool that will pull up PDFs of all of those documents. So again, it's there, but it's just sort of the very, very basic, I think, of what should be required in terms of disclosure of these things. So, and Provo's doing all of this, so this is great. But we want to, again, sort of find ways to expand on this. So let's go to Lehigh's, if you don't mind, Ryan. And Lehigh's has got something cool here. If I did the link right, it should pop us right into a page that discusses their public meetings. Again, they don't have actually a dedicated website for the city council either, so they're a little bit behind here. But what they do have, and hopefully we can pull up this in a second, is a little bit more content that is linked to the individual agenda items and the projects that are going on. So if people want to go in, they see something in the agendas, there are links there that pull up either sort of general project summaries or photos or other information that can give a little bit more realism to what, just the other information that might be on the page. This doesn't look like it's cooperating. That's okay.
I think we need to upgrade to fiber.
Right. We'll put that on the final slide. Okay, well that's okay. We can figure that out. I could sort of describe to you how that works. So for example, in Lehigh's agendas, oh great. Would you mind scrolling down just a little bit then? Let's go to the most recent city council meeting. So just a little bit further down. Yeah, let's see. Their city council, April 12th. Why don't we go to their agenda? See how this goes. And so here they've got a document that just summarizes the agenda, but let's scroll down maybe to the next page. I think there's an example of how they do some things. So, for example, they have a development. Why don't you click on one of these here? Hopefully something opens up. But generally, most of these they can, that's too bad. Looks like it's not pulling up. So there are some technical issues even on other websites as well. But the ones that I've looked at, often they'll allow you to pull up photos or maybe try one of these Eddington PDFs. I don't know if that'll do too much for us. They'll pull up sort of relevant content that'll show, for example, if it's a development, where the map is, some photos of the property, a sort of document summarizing what they've presented to the council. That's just fine, right? Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. So that is something that I think that we could add and that could be connected to what's being done already. Let's go back to the PowerPoint for a second. And for the sake of time, maybe we can skip Salt Lake City, and I'll just describe this one as well, so we're not playing around too much with the web browser there. But Salt Lake City is actually probably the most similar to Provo. In the city council has a dedicated website that has sort of tabs and summaries for a few of these things. So it has the calendar and the agenda and minutes, as well as sort of an updates on, hey, we're having this meeting to get your feedback. I know on their website right now, they're talking about economic development, so they say, we want you to submit your ideas through this sort of forum that we have on how to promote economic development in Salt Lake City, as well as come to this open city meeting in a few days. And so they have a little bit more content. It's a little bit more accessible that way. But let's talk about Provo for a second. So we can jump ahead, Ryan, and talk about what policy pages might look like for Provo specifically. And if we go to the next one, this is just sort of my exploration. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Of what we would hopefully want to be able to do with these policy pages. So we want to have, again, this sort of two-way communication where the council can inform the public about what's going on, and the public can give feedback as well as their own ideas that can help them get more engaged and get people more involved in the policy-making process, besides sort of just at the very end when they come to make an angry comment at a council meeting and everything's sort of already been discussed and decided over the course of a few months. So again, this accessibility we think is absolutely crucial to getting people involved early in the process. So one fun little exercise that I did a couple months ago was just start looking for information about particular issues that the council is discussing here at Provo. And then I just sort of made a map of how I could get to that information about each of those issues. So started off with just a Google search and found some sort of the hubs of information that the council is using right now. So there's the blog site, the dedicated site that Provo has right now. There's the Facebook groups, you guys have seen those. And then there's the official city site. And then I started talking about sort of the resources that are available on each of those. And then at the issue level, what is talked about particular issues at each of those different websites. So when and where they're addressed, that's sort of the calendaring, the actual details of the policy. You see some of those in the blog posts or in what individual council members write to their constituents. Sometimes council opinion is shown in some of the minutes, and then public opinion is shown in some of the Facebook groups and occasionally in public comments. So what this looked to me actually was very promising, that a lot of this information is out there, but the trouble is that it's a little bit difficult to access it all if you're just looking for something about a particular issue, which I think is what a lot of people want to do. You know, if they hear something, they see a tweet, or they read something online or something in the news, They say, okay, I want to learn about this one particular issue. And so it would be useful for us, if we could, to aggregate all that information in one place instead of having it in 3 or 4 different places at once. And so the idea with these policy pages is to take sort of everything at this issue level at the very bottom here and group it into a single page where people can then view it there and engage with it at that level. So that's what I mentioned kind of here. And I wanted to talk about a couple places where I found that this might be working. Oh, sorry.
I think our batteries are.
I'll speak loud.
Oh, yeah, you're
yeah.
fine. It'll
Okay,
pick you up there too.
Great. So again, the idea is to have a place where there's input and discussion from the public, but also updates in the decision process and requests for feedback from the council as well. So I found a kind of cool example of this in Albuquerque. We'll try this link and see if that works. Where they do give a little bit more of information about individual projects that are happening. And it's not perfect, but they do have a couple cool features that I thought was useful. So here, the city has some of their current projects initiated by the city council, and they've got a list of some things that they're working on right now. Let's scroll down, maybe jump on the secondary dwelling units. I know that one was working at least this morning, so hopefully that's helpful. So here's to start. We can scroll down and look at some of this, but for example, they've got updates on what the city has discussed and how the proceedings are going, starting from the very beginning, but also giving sort of a timeline. I know one thing that Dave has mentioned is that often is that citizens feel that, you know, they're just hearing about this at the last minute and something's trying to get sort of snuck through, when in reality it's been being talked about for months on end. And so here you can see that and anticipate it and provide citizens updates. And then what I also loved about what Albuquerque is doing is that they have this very succinct sort of summary section, right? Where they give the basic idea of the policy in very understandable terms for the layman, just some bullet points. They didn't have quite as much as I would have liked to see about sort of pros and cons about this, so I think that's one weakness there. But I think they do give a very accessible view of some of the most important projects. I think this is something that could be done. Again, not with everything, not to overburden, but with the more important issues there as well. So that's there. And then additionally, I just point out the contact information at the bottom. This is somewhere where I think their sort of model is lacking. Yeah.
So pros and cons, but they do in bold talk about the last sentence. The overarching intent of these amendments is to allow another housing option to meet shifting demographic demands such as aging populations who want to live closer to relatives.
Yeah.
So at least they give the intent.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's I especially love that they give that as part of the summary. So yeah, that's definitely part of it. And I think the intent is a great way of sort of signaling to people this is what we're trying to do here. Yeah. So again, I think the sort of the thing that's missing from this model is how citizens get back in touch with government and then give their ideas and feedback and have discussion here. You know, there's an email, there's a phone number, but I don't think that's the best way of doing that. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. I want to talk about another city that I think has got the other side of things really down. And that is Austin, Texas. So let's try going here. Austin, Texas is using a software that I'll talk about in a second. I know that Dave Sewell has been interested in sort of software solutions for civic engagement. So this was a cool nugget that we found here. But Austin has this cool system called Speak Up, in which it's all designed to get civic engagement from people, all working both from the city to citizen side, but mostly I think it's a great model of how cities can get input from citizens. So they've got things, for example, they've got sections on discussions, forums, ideas, surveys. These are all channels through which the public engages with the city government. We can hop in if you want to discussions and maybe pick one of those. And let's see. Let's just go to this first one, mobility priorities. So here this is similar to what we saw with Albuquerque, in that the city will present a sort of initiative that they're thinking about, give sort of a summary of it, the intent again. But what I really love if we scroll down to the bottom, is that it's got several sort of topic threads. So it's got, within this general idea, it's got travel patterns, it's got priority categories, trade-offs, you know, so for bicycling or bus transit, and then for each of those, it's got areas for responses. So People can make comments on each of those. I think if you go in a little bit further, we don't have to do this, but people can like vote up each other's responses. It's a very social, very engaging sort of medium.
Could you just quickly hop inside one of those? I'm
Yeah,
curious to see
yeah.
what it looks like.
Sure, yeah. Let's see. So there's a comment section. I recall seeing somewhere if you were able to sort of sign up or sign in, it gives you a little bit more options that you can see of what's able to be done. But here it's got options to view those comments, and you can pull them up. And I think you can sort of tag particular people or things that you want to see in that, and link to other places on the website.
Yeah, so there's the comments and the responses to comments
And the votes.
upvotes.
Do you know if those comments are moderated at all?
I think they are moderated. There's some warning, yeah. So it says moderator, and then I remember seeing some sort of like fine print at the top of one of these pages that comments will be moderated or content, blah, 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 you know, which is probably appropriate. So, yeah, I think this is a great way of seeing sort of the other channel that we want to see, which is getting people involved in these discussions and bring them in. And again, this can be linked to a lot of different social media. It could really complement the things that are going on right now. So I think that gives a good idea of the other side of things. We can hop back to the PowerPoint.
You know what software they use for that?
Yeah, so this software is called Speak Up. If you want to hop onto their website, we can show you this. I won't spend too much time on it again. There are people that know a lot more about this kind of thing than I do, so I'll leave that to you guys. But to me, here they've at least got sort of a useful summary of the resources that they provide. I know that I think if you scroll down, they talk about collecting ideas, sort of being able to post things. And my understanding is something cool about Speak Up is that they also allow for sort of internal development as well as just sort of this external display of things. So you're able to have sort of this internal control of documents and be editing them with the teams or policy analysts or whoever. And then you can choose what's available to the public and what's displayed. So you're able to get sort of both sides of things from the city's perspective as well. So yeah, I would look at Austin right there.
I don't know how fine-grained you got with this, but what's the cost? Do you know anything about
I don't know what the cost estimate would be. Someone might know. Yeah.
I did notice that Granicus, the company that puts this together, I believe that's who was hosting Lehigh's public documents. I think I noticed.
Oh, okay. I hadn't
Just
caught
in
that.
the URL, I noticed that as you were presenting. So.
Cool. So maybe, yeah, Lehigh might know more than I do on that. Great. So yeah, Speak Up I think is another great way of doing that. So let me just we can hop back to the PowerPoint and I'll finish up here. But the idea again is to have means by which the council can communicate with the public and the public can communicate with the council. And I think one of the best ways to do this is through online outreach. And a lot of the ideas that we discussed for meeting procedure or for work meetings and just getting people involved early in the process, I think this is going to be a great tool for getting that done. So this is what we talked about, sort of a summary of what we've been thinking about. I'm happy to take any questions that you guys have, but I think this could be a really good thing for the city.
I think we tend to get information, you know, in large bulk over the last 3 days, for instance, 100 emails in 7 hours. And so, and it's hard to respond to 100 emails. I don't know, I haven't counted them all. I stopped counting after about 60, but there's a large amount of emails before this meeting today, and to respond to all those, especially when we have a meeting coming up, it really is, it's difficult. And taking those phone calls, and you do, but you try to do what you can, but trying to respond to citizens when you're that close to a decision is difficult. And having, I really like the idea of having it by issue, because I think people are, they're into an issue. That's why they engage usually, is an issue. So I like the idea of having an issues page where they can go to that page and they can get accurate information, because sometimes there's misinformation that sometimes can get spread, and it's helpful to make sure that they have one one go-to place where they can get, they know it's accurate information, and then they can formulate their questions to that information when if they do decide to email us or to call us, and we're not having to correct information. We just have a discussion about what the actual, the facts are.
Yeah.
And it's not always the case. A lot of people are very in tune, and when they call you, they know the facts. But there is some misinformation. I like the idea of having an area where they can come and they say, I want to know about this, and they click on that, and they have all the information. They have a forum where they can back and forth with people, and they can back and forth conversation with council members, even on that forum. It's really appealing to me.
This is the first time I had heard that speak of having kind of this public side as well as a restricted side or an internal side. At one point, we were talking with Bryce about something like policy pages, and there was some concern about the time that it takes to put it together, and is the audience, is it the council members to help us coordinate it together, or is it the public to get the information out? And it sounds like that could be on the same platform with just kind of a checkbox on whether it's public or not. That might be a good way to kind of coordinate some of our efforts and just to try to reduce the duplication of efforts.
Really like the idea of having a moderated forum as part of it too, so there's kind of a safe place for residents to go and for council members to respond, where it's one comment per citizen, and it's enforced that it's kind of policy or issue oriented, not personal.
Yeah.
That kind of, so that would be great.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about that, going to what Kim was saying, is that you can sort of aggregate concerns. If 60 people say, okay, we all have the same concern, you don't have to write 60 emails. You just say, okay, we're going to group this all in this thread, and let me respond to and tag all of them.
A lot of them are similar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be really helpful. I mean, you want to be personal. You want to be able to answer those calls. You want to be able to answer those emails. But in 72 hours, and it's hard to do that before a meeting.
Yeah.
And so that would be a nice way to get information out and get it out quickly into,
And one of the things that I really like about this effort, or one of the things I think will be key, is we know that people are going to engage. How can we get them to engage earlier on in the process so it's not at the end? And I do think that, I don't think we'll ever fix that problem completely, but I think we can move that to the point that we are getting more of that information, more of that engagement early on.
right? And just informing people about what's going on. I think that's the hardest thing is getting that information out. We have certain channels, that we do that through email and through our newsletters and through, Facebook and those different avenues, but you need followers, and you need email lists, and you need 117,000 people, and even the best lists maybe have 1,000, and so just how do you get the information out is a challenge. So
I think it's a lot more sort of shareable if it is in this more compact, summarized form. I feel like, if I were concerned about an issue, I would be a lot more prone to share it with my neighbor if I could say, check out this page, it's got 3 pros and cons, than say, here, watch this, hour and a half of the council discussing it in a work meeting. As great as this is, right?
No,
but
right. If they can go to Provo City Council and they can pull up all the information and get a lot of good information, and I think that's critical too.
So in the last day, we just got 100 people that said they wanted to sign up for our newsletter.
It's 100 more, and that's good to be able to communicate with, as many as possible. But how do we really reach, more of our citizens? How do we, and when they're concerned about an issue, we do need to do a way better job of having information readily available and easily available. And our website is a practice in frustration, I know, sometimes trying to find information. And so, I mean, it's good in a lot of areas, but trying to find specific information, we could do a much better job. And on our council website, keeping things updated and keeping, I really like that idea of having things by issue, where they don't have to sift through meetings, they don't have to sift through agendas. They can just click on an item and, you know, have all the information available.
I mean, I would imagine right now you hear from a very small sample of the people, and it's usually the same sample. It's the people who are willing to sort of sift through all of that and watch these meetings or whatever. But if you can make that easier, then suddenly the cost of obtaining that information or giving that feedback goes way down, and you broaden the sample representativeness of people who are doing that.
That's true until you have a hot button issue.
Right, yeah, exactly. So now you just got to do more controversial stuff, and then you'll have lots more people involved.
I think one of our greatest challenges is people are being informed by the newspaper, but all too often it's not the full story. It's not necessarily the story that we want to talk about, or it's not complete. I mean, whether it's incomplete or has a spin on it, we are at a disadvantage when it comes to what goes out in the paper sometimes. We don't have a place to respond or editorialize it very easily. And so we just sometimes have to say, well, if you read it in the paper, you better talk to me first.
Right. So this might be a way to do it.
Well, and Salt Lake also has their own news writers. They have someone who puts out articles and then provides that for the press, and they, you know, they to some extent they tell their own story by, you know, having their own news writer on staff and sending it out to the different, you know, media. So there are definitely some options to do a better job of telling our story, of connecting with citizens, forces, and communities about that, you know, that communication, and a better job, I think, of having a repository of information that's easily accessible. Since this is one of our priorities this year, what's your thought? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings about where you want to go with that? You know, something that we should come together on at some point and give some direction.
One other thing that didn't come up here, but I think is an important component of this, is email. I'd really like to see the council and the neighborhood chair program integrate their email lists so that with each email list we have an address, we know what council district they're in, we know which neighborhood that they live in, and then of course there'd be some permission issues and things to work out. But so anytime anyone signs up either for a council email or for a neighborhood chair email, they have the option of subscribing to both or unsubscribing to both later on, or either one, and that sort of thing. I think we could be a lot more effective in communication together.
Great.
So I went to that West Side meeting, and they passed around a roll to sign up for what I thought was the mayor's or administration's email. It wasn't for the neighborhood, and it wasn't for the council, and I can't remember where I read it, or it just seemed that the feedback I got was this was just for the administration, and so we missed an opportunity there if we wanted to pick up names for ours, because it's currently not being shared, and I got the impression it wasn't going to be shared, but maybe you can make a breakthrough there.
Can I add to that? I think long term we would definitely like to share with the administration. Currently they have said they're not willing to, but I think part of that is because we don't really have anything to offer right now. You know, they have a massive list, and I think if we get this going and they can see that we've got a good solid list, and if we have some names that they don't, they have some that we don't, then it will make more sense to integrate.
Well, and there's that part too where the citizens, I like them choosing who they want to receive information from, and so Karen has put together a form that you can take to count to those neighborhood meetings. When I go to neighborhood meetings, I'll bring clipboard with that form on it and pass it around, and then people have the option, and it actually has all council members on on there, and it has just the council blog, those kinds of things. I can't remember, Karen. I think it's Karen. Has the individual council members, but it has options. They can just check, so they can put their email, sign it one place, and then they can check where they want to receive information from. And I like that too, because you can send them an email and say unsubscribe if you don't want that, but I think it's better to have them, want to receive emails from you, and so that it's slower, as far as building up that list, but that's something that you can do when you go to your neighborhood meeting. She already has a form available, and just take that and have them sign that form.
Sure. Just to ask Dave a question, if the idea is to have better informed citizens, why would the administration be willing to share in that issue just because they have more names than we have? Why would they want to share?
Well, I can't speak for them, but they came in when they were first elected with a whole bunch of names already, and there's a number of reasons. I probably should go into that, but we've asked on a number of occasions, and I just have the impression that they're not ready yet. But once we get something solid and working well that they have confidence in, I think that would be a definite possibility down the road.
If I can respond, I want to reiterate what Tim just said, because I think that addresses your question. When someone signs up and says, I want to receive email from the administration, maybe they don't care. Well, administration cares, then maybe there's no difference. But for some people, it matters. I, as a neighborhood chair, I kept my email list, and I asked people, would you like to sign up for the neighborhood email? And I had one member of the administration say, well, hey, give us your email list. And I said, actually, no. They signed up for the neighborhood email. They didn't sign up for the city. And so I would, in my emails to them, I'd say, hey, if you'd like to receive email from the city, click here. But I didn't feel comfortable. I felt like they trusted me with their email address for specific use, and so I don't think sharing of email lists is courteous, I guess.
That's understood. Thank you. And that's even happened internally within the administration, where the library refused to share their list with the mayor, because for the exact same reason, because they felt like people signed up to receive emails from the library, they didn't have permission to.
I didn't understand that it said specifically to receive it from the administration. That makes sense.
But would the library be willing to put out something saying, do you want to sign up with the mayor, the council, the neighborhood? Because then people could opt in. Yeah.
Possibly. That was a long discussion. I don't remember how they ever came out with it officially.
Really?
But it was still under discussion last time.
We do need to move on to the next item, but I feel like we should have a plan going forward here, whether that's to have staff, look into some of these options and come back to us, or do you have a motion in mind?
Ooh, motion. I don't know about a motion, but I did want to publicly thank Soren for his great work on this. I think he's really moved it forward in a time when I didn't have a whole lot of time to be moving it forward. But this is one of the 3 bullet points under public engagement, and the one that I kind of signed up for. So I'm willing to continue to move it forward, kind of into the next stage of, okay, now we've done a lot of research, now let's get a more specific proposal. And I think Luis has worked on this, Karen's worked on it. I never followed up on how that meeting went. So I know that there's discussions out there. I know Dave's been looking at some of the software as well. But I'll try to kind of take it to the next step and bring a proposal back to the council.
Okay. So we are, right now, Sire is turning into, what's the new name?
Software bought it, and it's called OnBase.
OnBase. And does that have, and it would be nice to know if that has these capabilities, because it seems like this is the type of a Sire that other people are using, and it would be nice to know what the differences are. And I know there are things that you can add to this program, and are there things that maybe we could add to this to have some of those capabilities with what we currently have, or to compare the two and see, what we could get that would be more in line with some of our goals.
So I like the one that where it laid out the meeting agenda, and then under each item it gave the links. Sometimes I go onto the Sire page and it's got this super long laundry list, and I'm going, let's see, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I think I want this one.
So have them divided up by item. Because they do have the agenda, and then all the items are all listed, kind of clumped together. And, yeah, not necessarily, they don't really have that header.
So it's pretty flexible. It seems like if I click on this link, I get it all in one. If I click on another, I get only the attachments. I click on another, and then I get the issues. And if I click on the issues, then I get it all onto the side. So I think there's a lot of flexibility in there, but it's almost, to me, it's almost like there's too many options. And if I click the wrong thing, I get what I'm expecting. And for a first-time person to walk in, it can be quite overwhelming. So I definitely would want to take a look at what we already have and what's rolling out and what we might be able to add on, as well as maybe put it around for things to augment it. But yeah, I definitely think we should look closely at what we are already doing.
Then you mentioned that you would follow up with that. Do you want the staff follow up with that, or do you want to come back at a date certain to do with that, or?
I'd like to work with the staff,
Okay.
if that's all right, and I imagine it probably, I don't know about what their schedule is like, but it might take me a couple months.
I think
I
we do need to know by a certain date for
budgeting purposes, we need to know some things for on-base, but we can meet with Kyle on on-base and see what what they're doing and what they have in mind and what they can add to that, so.
Okay. I'm not certain I can get a date to come back by. I guess we just pick something and I'll just make sure it gets done by then. I guess I don't know how quickly we want to move forward.
It will be a couple months, within a couple months with Siren. So we're going to start working on that in the May, June.
So.
And the way those bullet points were split up, I was kind of on the software side, so I'd be happy to come back, say, in a month with some kind of report in the email. I guess the anarchist kind of falls a little bit in between two, so
They have to work with you.
It's going to be in May. Just come with whatever you have available.
Okay, update
on where we're at. We need a motion on that, those lines. So is there a motion along those lines of coming back with
We'll
update?
We'll move that Dave Harding continue to look at the issue of public engagement and specifically online interaction with staff and David Sewell, and we'll come back with an update on the second meeting. Do we know what date that is? May 7th, on the work session of May 17th.
And that will include a comparison between what we already have and what happens.
And we'll include comparisons of what we have and other options that are out there.
And other options. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Sewell. All in favor? The voting is unanimous. Thank you.
Gary.
Gary, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, did you hear that motion?
Yes.
Are you in favor or opposed?
I'm sorry, I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you, so that's unanimous. And welcome Mayor Curtis.
Thank you.
Welcome King Thunder, he's been here for a little bit. Mention that, and thank you very much, Mr. Yes. Thank you for being here and for providing this great information and helping forward with communicating better with our constituents.
My pleasure.
One last parting thought. Soren talked about there may be other BYU students that would be interested, possibly in capstone projects. And he feels like he might be able to make a connection if it's something that we're interested in. And we're not going to have the same caliber as we have with Soren, but I'm sure we could get some great resources through BYU students.
So if we're engaging with BYU students, how about how can we best engage with BYU students in general and inform them and get them involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think for millennials, it's online. That's the way to go. notifications and social media. That's the best way to get my generation involved. But yeah, what I was mentioning to Dave earlier is that BYU just created a civic engagement minor in which students do a capstone project related to like local government and civic engagement. And I think they would absolutely love to work with you guys in similar ways to what I've been doing with Dave this semester. So I just told him I'll talk with BYU and see if they'd be interested in that. That'd be cool, I think.
I move that we accept Mr. Schmidt's offer to help line us up with some resources at BYU to assist in this project. Mr. Harding and I.
All in favor? Do you have a discussion on this?
Yeah, the discussion on it. I would hope that it's not solely on the item that we're talking about, but I think the students can engage on probably just about most of our priorities. And so I agree with the motion other than restricting it to the topic that two of us are working on.
I'll second that motion to amend the original.
And it was seconded, Mr. Hammond. Well, you seconded.
Yeah,
You amended the
Well, no,
motion, or you
interpreted that as a
Dave
motion
Connect
to amend.
seconded.
Oh,
And I
and you
seconded that. I
seconded,
don't know if that
okay.
was proper.
Okay, that's good. All right, so all in favor?
Is there now, did you follow that?
Did you follow that, Gary?
Well, what I had was Dave Hardy made the motion, Dave Connect seconded it, and then Dave Sewell amended the motion.
Dave Sewell made the motion. Connect seconded it.
Right.
Dave Harding amended it,
Oh,
and
okay.
Dave Sewell seconded the amendment.
Second. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Coalition.
I have a question. Mayor, can you tell us anything about the Office of Civic and Public Engagement? They have a minor, and they hosted the debates, and recently some other activity. It was kind of a workshop in BYU. So, what do you know? Are they how actionable are they? Apparently, they're doing some things.
I don't know really I don't feel qualified to answer that question. I've been up to speak to him, and Wayne's been up to speak to him, but beyond that, I don't know.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next item then.
Yeah, I think we need to finish the vote.
Oh, did we vote
On the
on that?
amendment.
Oh, okay.
That's-
Oh, because Mr. Winterson hasn't voted. Are you there, Gary? Gary, are you there? Did we lose you?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so did you hear the motion on that?
No, I did not hear that motion. I'm sorry. Did I have people set my microphone on the table? I'm not doing as well as the one on the pulpit. Sure.
Okay. Louise, do you mind reading?
Yes. Move to accept Mr. Schmidt's offer to assist with the project and with Mr. Harding, project, with Mr. Harding and Mr. Sill. Seconded by Dave Connect. And then there was a second amendment to that. It says, hope it is not solely on this item, but probably on most of our priorities.
Did you hear that, Gary?
Yes, and I'll vote in favor of that.
Okay, thank you. Voting is unanimous. In the affirmative, thank you.
So technically, we've just approved the amendment, so now we need to vote on the amended motion. Correct, Mr. Jones?
We could follow it that way. I had it interpreted as being, we were voting on the motion as amended.
That's all, okay.
So I think that's what
We're good? Yep.
as long as there's no objections.
Would revert that object.
So, in our efforts to get people here a little quicker, to fill in some of the time when we're waiting for some of our members, I've asked Susie Bramble to come and present next for your item, the discussion on funding for the Miss Provo Pageant.
Okay.
adjusting your.
Thank you. I dragged Robin out of bed. She just had back surgery, so she's kind of.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's my first outing. It's nice to get out of the house. Anyway, all right. In 2010, the mayor felt like it was hard to lay off employees and pay for 3 or 4 girls in a scholarship pageant. The pageant had kind of gone downhill, and it just needed to see better days. So Robin and myself and a few other ladies decided that this was a program that was worth saving. The Miss America organization is all 50 states. Utah, of all states, has the most participation out of all the rest of the states. We have anywhere between 50 and 60 local pageants that feed into the Miss Utah pageant every year, and I think the next closest state to us is like 25. And so it's a big deal here in the state of Utah. So anyway, we offered to take it over from the mayor and go raise the money and get girls excited to come and participate. So over, that was 2010, so over the 6 years that we've had it, I think we've done really well. I'm going to pass these out so you guys can, this was our program from last year. So you can see the caliber of girls that we're getting. We've raised the bar. When we first took over, the scholarships were 1,000, 300, and 200. In fact, the first year we took over, money hadn't been set aside for the scholarships, so we had to step in and raise the money to pay for those scholarships of the girls that had won the year before. So anyway, I'm going to give you, here is kind of the money that we have spent over the last, just an average of what we spend each year so that you can see kind of where the money comes in and goes. But our scholarships now, we decided, after we took over, we decided that we needed to sit down and evaluate, what's keeping girls from coming? Is it, the scholarship amounts? Do we need to make it so that they'll come? So we raised the scholarships. So for Miss Provo now, we give her $3,000, which is about right in the middle. There's a couple that do a little bit more in the state, and there's a few that do less. So we're right in the middle there. Our first attendant, we give her $1,500, and our second attendant, we do $750. Our Miss Utah fees every year are about $2,000, depending on if they have a little up in crown prices or whatever that we have to pay. But the Covey Center, we've been paying the price for the Covey Center, and attached to your list.
Would you mind stepping to the podium?
It's hard to
hear very well if we're not speaking into the mic, so we'll be able to hear you better.
All right. So the Covey Center, can you still hear? It doesn't sound like.
Yes.
All right. You can hear better?
Yes.
Okay, so for the Covey Center, each year it's gone up a little bit. So the price on here is our quote for what it's going to be this year. And then the rest of that all fluctuates. I kind of went through an average what we spend over the last 6 years, and that's kind of an average price for the rest of stuff. So anyway, every year, Robin and I go out and bug businesses, and we collect money, and we've been happy to do it just so that we can prove that this is a program that we need to keep going. We've had great girls that have participated. I'm going to let Robin talk about some of the queens that we've had in the last 6 years, okay, and what they've done with their scholarship.
Yeah, I just want to touch a little bit on what they've majored in, what they've used their scholarships for that we've given them. So I'm going to start back with 2010 when we took over. Our queen was Chelsea Hall that year, and she used her scholarship at BYU studying exercise and wellness. And she actually is a really big blogger. I don't do a lot of food blogging, but if you do, she's been on Pillsbury's site. She's done a lot of really cool things. She goes out and makes recipes and does a lot of blogging and things with it. And it's called Chelsea's Messy Apron. And that was the year we took over. I didn't know the attendance as well, so I don't have what they did. The next year was Meredith Gaffane. She was our queen. And I wanted to tell you what they did for their service also. Each girl takes a platform that they serve on all year. And beyond that, they also work with Primary Children's Hospital. They've been doing the STEM project, and then they help the mayor, the city, anything that you guys need help with. We try to do that as well. Chelsea's focus was diabetes education. She did a lot raising money for the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. Meredith went to BYU. She used the scholarship we gave her at BYU. She's now currently at University of Utah in the School of Medicine. She's going on to be a doctor, and I think she wants to be a surgeon. Her big platform was volunteerism. She did a lot going into schools and getting kids to volunteer and showing them how important it is if you get involved in the community and you volunteer and you help people. Her first attendant was Melanie Jones, and she was also at BYU majoring in business management. And Kimmy Bramble was her second attendant, and she was at BYU majoring in accounting. Katie Purse was our queen in 2012, and her platform was literacy. She went into a lot of elementary schools, getting them excited about reading, and that was her main focus that year. She graduated from BYU in public relations. Her attendant was Lydia Nielsen, and she went to BYU in nursing school, and McCall Waite, who served in LDS Mission right after, and now she's back and attending UVU. Stacia Heaps was our queen in 2013, and her platform was breast cancer awareness. She worked a lot with Susan G. Komen and with the Breast Cancer Foundations, and she's majoring in nursing also at BYU. Lydia Nielsen was her attendant that year, and it was kind of neat that she came back and she was able to raise $3,000 towards her schooling, even though she never won, just from being an attendant 2 years in a row. And then Joey Kapp was their other attendant, and she was at UVU in dental hygiene school. Then we had Melissa Richardson was our queen in 2014, and her platform, she worked with Fight the New Drug, and she did a ton. You probably saw her at different meetings. She's still very active. She's actually just finishing up a semester in DC, working with the Center on Sexual Exploitation, and she's done a lot of work with them. So she was probably our biggest platform. I think everybody knew what she was doing, and she's still very actively involved in that. And
she won at Miss Utah with her platform as well.
Yes, they gave one award to all of the women running, and she was the one that received that, so that was neat. She is in family life at BYU as well. That's where her scholarship went. Jessica Porter was her first attendant, and she majored in marketing at BYU. And her second attendant was Ellie Benson, and she is at BYU, and I don't know that she's declared a major yet. She was just fresh out of high school when she ran. Kelsey Taylor is our current Miss Provo, and she was at BYU. And Taylor Andrews Academy is a cosmetology school, and they offer a scholarship for full tuition to our winner every year. And so she decided to put her BYU on hold and is taking advantage of the scholarship at Taylor Andrews. And then when she graduates there, she'll be able to take the $3,000 and go back to BYU. So, and she is doing, her platform is working with kids with disabilities. She's on the board for Best Buddies. She works a lot helping do proms for the disabled kids, and she's worked with Turn Center and a lot of different things working with disabled children and helping them to feel like they're more included. Cami Jones is her first attendant, and she's at BYU studying genetics and biotechnology. And Rachel Slauson is her second attendant, and I don't know where she is at school currently. But we haven't awarded their scholarships. We'll do that after our next pageant. So that's just a little bit about the background, that they are all very successful. A lot of them are still working on their platforms, even though they're long past being Miss Provo. They really started to love those programs and have stayed involved, along with a lot of the girls that didn't win have been really active in those. So I think it's great to get them in community involvement. I know they've loved working with the mayor in different activities that we've done with the city, and also with the Freedom Festival, we work a lot with them. So
anyway, this is a program that we feel that should be continued, and it, you know, in most communities, it is funded by the city, and we don't mind still raising some money and having some skin in the game, but we're getting to the point where it's getting a little difficult every year to go out and raise the money that we need. And so anyway, so we're coming to you to ask for an appropriation. What we would like, I don't know if it's called an appropriation here, is it? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so to cover the scholarships, it's $5,250. And then if we cover the Miss Utah fees that we have to pay every year, and then to help us cover the Covey Center, that's about $10,000. Those are our solid costs that if we don't, I mean, we can't run a pageant if we don't cover those things. The rest of the stuff, we don't mind going out, getting sponsors, having donations and things like that. So anyway, we love doing it. We love these girls. I think we've raised the caliber of the girls that we've gotten, because it's worth their time to come and participate, because it will actually cover a semester or a little bit more of school. And so are there any questions that we can answer?
And if you look through the programs, you can see all of those sponsors. The two of us have gone out and gotten almost all of those. So like Susie said, we're not wanting to not go out and get it. We will still work hard and get extra sponsors. Most people are willing to give stuff, they'll give scholarships to their schools. That Acadia one that was open there, they give a tuition to schooling.
Well, and
most people, it's just really hard to get money from them. And these hard costs have to be money. The gifts and the different things that are listed below, we can get stuff to do that. But the scholarships and those hard costs, we need cash.
And, oh, I forgot. Oh, Acadia also gives, no, not Acadia. Taylor Andrews also gives each girl that participates a $1,000 scholarship. So if any of them are thinking, I mean, we get a lot of good donations, so the girls get a lot of fun things. So anyway, it's worth their while, even if they don't win. In fact, we have 2 or 3 girls that are coming back this year that ran last year. So
we had the opportunity, I think it was 2 years ago, you asked a few of us, the council members, to sit at the dais and kind of allow the girls an opportunity to share their, or to have an interviewing experience. And I remember being so impressed with the caliber of women that were there. Well-spoken, they it's just very impressive, really intelligent. You know, look at their majors. Those aren't, you know, soft, easy majors. So, and then to see Melissa Richardson and the way that she's contributed to our community with Find the New Drug. I've heard nothing but glowing reports from PTA meetings and parents who have attended. I have yet to hear a negative about about those. I don't know what you call them, but parent meetings. They have parent meetings, and they also have meetings with the youth. And the one I went to was actually BYU, and it was just really well done. So she's definitely used her platform to bless our community. I appreciate the work that she's done and that you've done to give her this opportunity.
And if you notice, since we have taken over, the girls are actually doing better at Miss Utah as well. We are trying to get them prepped, like you said, with the interview. And I was impressed with them that year that you were there, too, because that was one of the first interviews we'd done with them. And they still were able to perform really well. So, yeah, we are trying to get them prepped well so that they go and make a good showing at Miss Utah. So.
And it's not all about the swimsuits. You know, everybody goes, oh, it's about swimsuits. That, you know, that's like 5% of their score. It's about the confidence that they have. It's about the way they project themselves to an audience. I mean, that's what it's all about.
A lot of how they describe that, because I know there is an issue with swimsuit, is that is a way for them to show, first of all, their confidence, like she said, and that they can handle a stressful situation. A lot of times you're asked to come and do a performance or to speak to a group, and then things change last minute. So it's a good way to show that you can handle things, you can act on your toes. So, thank you. We appreciate your time.
Any other questions?
To discuss, I'd like to make a motion that we add $10,000 to the council budget for Miss Provo.
For this. Is there a second?
Was that this next year's budget?
To fiscal year 2016, 2017. Okay, I'm sure Mr. Grant, there'll be some discussion on that.
Yeah, I think I would wholeheartedly agree with all the good things they've said, and I'd probably even add some more about the good work that they've done. But I'd ask the council to consider a couple of things. One is, how do you stack this up with the next group that's going to come to you and ask for help and support for very good causes? And if that's a decision that you make, that's easy for me to support, but I would probably suggest that you be prepared to really adopt the whole program rather than split it between our office and your office. But if this is something that's important to you and that you want to support, you should just really take the whole program, because it's a little dysfunctional from my perspective to have us fund part of it and you fund part of it.
The part that you fund is the float.
Correct.
So is that $400 for the float?
No, it's a $10,000.
Oh, it's
it costs $10,000 to make a float every year.
Okay.
It's a Provo
And we
City
don't.
float, right?
It's a Provo
It is a
City
Provo
float. It's not a Miss. I mean, it's
None
a.
of it's Provo.
Right.
They realize that's good.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a huge service. that they provide by managing that float and taking it to the parades. I think that's a huge win-win for us. They get to have that opportunity to be in the parades, and it represents the city in the parades, which I think is important. But that would be my suggestion if it's something that you want to fund, that you consider just taking the program.
So Mayor, then you're suggesting that we just fund the float also?
Yeah, move it from our budget to yours, but it's more than that. It's the management, and that they would be coming to you with issues and not us.
Question, could that go the other way too?
No, because we've kind of already made our decision on what we want to support, and they're here today because they would like the city to support more than we're supporting.
Excuse me, okay.
I want to be careful because I don't want to make them feel bad if I jump for joy if you took it over.
Well, if I can say anything, I mean, I think that we are the only city that does not fully support their scholarship pageant. And we were willing to take it over and help because we saw the potential in it. And I think we've proven that there is a potential. But anyway, and I mean, if we don't have a float, it doesn't break my heart. But if we want people to come to our parades, and if we want the royalties to, you know, all the other cities, I mean, you gave us 10 cities, but we were contracted to make sure we were in those parades. And I think we do 12 now. There's a couple others.
A couple of the smaller Utah County. He wanted us mostly to keep Utah County covered, and that's what we've tried to do. So we've added 2 more Utah County that have added parades.
And we hire a driver, we do all of that, so the city doesn't worry.
And you bring up a good point. There is a comparative analysis of what other cities are seeing for their pageants.
Administration refers to, as the council officer, as the council director is willing to accept that responsibility. I have no problem with putting our budget. If the mayor feels like it'd be better to have it consolidated.
Question in regard to that, how much operational work would be involved if we were to take that over? I mean, what?
Ask the mayor how much he does.
That's not a fair question because I do almost nothing.
We'll take it then.
Really, we come to him and ask him if he likes this float. And we tell him about the programs and tell him.
It is the city that is fueling it, and any maintenance that's done on the car comes through the city.
Yeah.
But I would assume that's happening regardless of which of you are talking to them.
Mr. Hardy?
I don't know if now's the time to jump in on this or wait a little bit longer, but you know, we've been talking with the budget committee. We've been talking about not only like what does something cost, but what are the opportunity costs? If we spend this amount of money on this, what are we not funding, and what's the value of the things not funding? And then you know, there are so many good endeavors out there. How are we going to decide between, hey, this is a great thing, you know, but we're not going to fund it, versus, oh, this is a great thing and we are going to fund it. And that's not something I'm necessarily looking forward to, is having a bunch of great causes come to us and ask if we'll fund them as well. In the same time where we are increasing our utility rates 100% over a few years and whatnot, I'm struggling. I agree. I think this is a great program. I think it's doing a lot of great things. I just kind of question the council's, the city's role in funding that. And it sounds like some things have already been worked out, not as much as this group would like, but you know, we're getting some benefits out of it by having a Provo float. So I worry about increasing that, and while the mayor may not do a lot of things, you know, it may be, I imagine that your staff does some of those things, and so we don't even have our future executive director on board to say whether that person would be interested in doing that. So there's a lot of things that I'm unsure about.
Which will the council decide the executive director's role? So we tell him what he's going to be interested in.
Okay.
Number two, I think it's a red herring to say that we're going to have a lot of people come to us and request it. This is the first time I've had a request that I was willing to forward to leadership. And the only things they're going to get on the council agenda as far as funding is what a council member comes to leadership and sees there's enough support to put it on the agenda. And the only reason this is on the agenda is there was enough support from council members to discuss it. I don't think we're going to be getting huge number just because we fund Provo, just because we fund Miss Provo.
Okay. I also don't view this as a new request. How many years has this program been going on in Provo?
It's been Miss Provo since 1969, and it was funded by the city up until 2010.
So basically debating whether it's going to die on the vine or whether we're going to support it, and I would support it. How much do you think, I mean, you'll be coming back, if we support you, you'll come back and you'll report probably to the whole council in a work session, and once you have the funding, you pretty much kind of do your own thing. What do you actually need the city to do for you after funding?
Well, we run it. We'd love to have you come to our pageant. We'd love to have you interview the girls and put them to work. They love to come to city events. They love to present their platforms. I mean, they want to work for the city. I mean, that's just what they do. You know, but as far as what we need you to do, we pretty well handle it all. We just let you know. I mean, what we tell the mayor, oh, this is the float this year. If you have any concerns, let us know. And
So it's not like we're adding a big workload to anyone in the council office.
From our perspective, we feel like it's important that the float fits with our branding, so that's an important checkpoint for us. We've felt that it's important that we're represented in our cities here in Utah County. Years ago, they would go up to Salt Lake City July 24th parade and skip Spanish Fork because it's the same day. And so those were the things that were important to us.
But assume that council leadership then would make those decisions, that we're taking it over, they would come to you to say, vote okay, as leadership, and whoever's in leadership at the time. Would that be your understanding there?
We could have them come to the full council.
Yeah, and I think we would want that to fit in with any branding, city branding image.
Interest on the administration's part, though, why wouldn't it be good to sort of leave the flow in your...
Because what you're doing is saying, we would do this differently than you. And I'm fine with that, but it's hard to do it both ways, right? It's hard to say, well, administration, our scope is bigger than your scope is on this, so you keep doing your scope, and we're gonna take this scope right here. To me, it's a program, right? And it's possible to bifurcate elements of the program and say, well, you worry about this, and we're going to worry about the scholarships, and where do some things fall in the middle, the things that are not defined by you, and who do they go to?
As a former mayor, I would prefer to stand in the mayor's office, but the mayor's office isn't willing to fund the pageant, and they would prefer us to take both things if we're going to take one. And I think the council has a responsibility to the city, if we want to continue this program, to continue to fund it.
And when they come back with the float and are looking for input, rather than just have staff or you chair make that final decision, if you come back before like a work session and the mayor's here, then we have the advantage of involving the mayor and hearing any input from the administration.
We're happy to give. It's not that we never want to talk about the program.
And in the past, he's never opposed to any floats that we brought.
They're in
final
tune
float.
with what we want now.
Yeah.
If they were gone someday and it's rotated to somebody else, and I would say ultimately that's not really me, it would be Brian and I that we would want looking at that and making sure it fits in with the branding.
My preference would be that it continues as it is with the mayor's office and with the code of funding. This is my preference,
Your preference is to use mayor's office without funding the pageant.
without increasing our current funding.
How do we vote on it?
As is mine.
Hold on, before we vote, if that were the case, if you did not get more funding, tell us what happens.
Well, I don't know how long we'll be able to do it. I mean,
Most likely, we will step down. If somebody wants to step up and go, you have no idea how many hours it takes us to go out and do that. Plus, we have our families, we also have other commitments. We want to do this, and we think it's a valuable program.
and it is, and
And like you said, if we leave, I don't know who will step up, if anyone, and what they will do. I think if it's not going to be a great program, I don't think we want Provo City being represented by something that's a mediocre or a poor program, because the other cities are stepping up and they're getting better programs.
So, can this decision be made here in work session, or does it actually need to be made a resolution for discussion in a business meeting, because it is appropriating money?
I was just talking about what adding to the budget.
And adding to
Could
the
be done
budget.
here.
Yeah, as I understand it, you're not actually appropriating.
We're just adding to our
You're giving
council.
direction, you're giving direction to the, yeah, and also to the mayor as when the budget comes to you next month, part of the council office's budget should be, the line item should be for the pageant and your budget comes back to you. So, so yeah, I think you can do that. I think you can do that here.
So just to clarify, we have to add 20,000 to the council budget to cover both of those pieces.
You're transferring 10 from the mayor's office to the
it's
council
actually
office.
11.
Okay.
There's $1,000 to hire a driver. So,
So we have a member of the budget committee here.
Just a question.
Oh,
Are
okay.
are there examples of other programs that are managed by the council in this way? If you move this 21,000 into the council, what that would be like, what other kind of program that you now run?
Neighborhood program. Which used to be the mayor's office, by the way, and it's transferred to the council's office.
Youth council, if we activated the youth council.
Fundamental difference in most of the neighborhood program is that it's a communication tool for the council. So,
It is a program that was managed by the mayor's office
It was.
previously. It was transferred to the council.
at the time that it was transferred, the code was amended to make it a opportunity or as a primary back and forth between neighborhood chairs and the council, representing information back and forth. And in some ways, that's part of the legislative process. Now, there are aspects of the neighborhood program that are administrative. There is a matching grant program, which we do administer. And there are some administrative duties to coordinate with neighborhood chairs and to run elections and stuff. But by and far, the council's interest has been communication, other than some peripheral activity. So there's a little bit of distinction in how the council could be justified in running a neighborhood program. That's primary focus is communication.
I'm comfortable with the council's role in supporting the neighborhood program. I think that is aligned with what our duties are. And so I feel comfortable with that.
Call the motion. So, I did have another question though. If it were part of the mayor's budget, if it were part of, came from another, I don't want to say pocket of money, but if it came from someone other than the council budget, would you be supportive of that, or are you just not supportive of doing more than what already do?
With our citizens' tax money, I'm struggling with it. I think it sounds like there's been a mutual private-public partnership that's been worked out where they're helping us with our branding, our float and whatnot, and so that to me is a nice symbiotic relationship. So I'm more comfortable with that than I would be to increasing
our support through the mayor's office, which it sounds like they're not interested in doing either. So,
And the main reason we're actually coming is that Czech City has been helping us a ton. And they're telling us, we just thought we were coming in for 1 year to save this. When it was going to go under, they were going to come up and bring those funds and help us get it going again. And so each year they keep saying, isn't the city going to step up? We don't, this isn't Miss Czech City. We don't want to fund this forever. And they're our main sponsors. So if they drop, we're really going to struggle.
I'd like to clarify too. I mentioned before, I support everything they've said. And they work their tails off to save this program. And the contestants have been great. Everything's been good about it. But we've had to make decisions along the way about priorities. And so when you stack this up against dispatch officers and police officers and firefighters, it's hard to justify. And so while I want to indicate that I support them and what they're trying to accomplish, our decision has been based upon balancing this with other things. And then the reality that we could get approached by the Boys and Girls Club, we could get approached by the thousands of good things that take place out there in our community. And it's very, very difficult to say yes to one and no to the next one that comes in. And it's been very important to me to be consistent in the level of support that we give these good causes throughout the community.
And I see it different that way because Boys and Girls Club, they're not ambassadors for the city, they're not out. They do good in what they're doing, but they're not ambassadors for the city. And they're not, when you think of Miss Provo, I mean, it's part of our heritage, it's part of what we do. It's when, growing up here in Provo, you go to the parade, they're in the parade. I mean, it's just a part of growing up in Provo. Okay, so we have a parade in Provo and we don't have Miss Provo float because we couldn't afford it that year. I mean, that might be a harsh reality, but if we don't have to go through that harsh reality and it's, $10,000 more to keep that and to allow these girls to have scholarship to further, I mean, these are some pretty, doctors, engineers, and, this is, I think we're contributing to significant education of these women, and they are an ambassador to the city. We could use them in certain ways. And I guess I go back to Melissa Richardson and I see the good that she's done with her platform. When someone has a platform and they can go out and benefit in the community in the way that she has done, I don't know that you can put a price on that. And so that's where I kind of feel like there's more to this than just other good causes. This is Provo. This has been part of our, I don't know.
I'm not going to contest any of that. Move forward. If the council says this is what we want to do, that's where I'm pleased to say do it. You won't find me objecting to it. But I do think it's important that you put the whole thing in your budget and be accountable for that. And you're not going to find me arguing anything that you've just said.
And I should qualify that I've never had an interest or it. I mean, there's never been something, that I've ever even thought to do. So I find myself, it's kind of funny that I'm advocating for this, but it's not funny because I feel like the good that has come from it and what I've seen come from it and helping these young women, really intelligent women that are going to go out and they're going to bless the community in so many ways. And so I feel like, yeah, you can put a dollar amount on it. You can compare it to Girls Club. You can compare it to some of the other city things that we do, but I feel like there's benefit there that you can't put a dollar sign on. So I don't know.
And Susie and I didn't do pageants either. We're not jumping on this because we were Miss Provo.
I stand,
Yeah, we were the same as you. We saw the value in it. It was going to be dropped, and we stepped up. And
just to remind the council, we're funding Downtown Alliance for $150,000 a year, and that was supposed to be a 1 year. When I was in the council, it was supposed to be a 1 year deal. We're still continuing to fund them for $150,000. Just take 10 from there if we need to. We're worried about $10,000. Take it from Downtown Alliance, and give them $140,000 instead of $150,000, and let this pageant and Miss Provo, not a foundation, Miss Provo organization succeed, because I think it gives us more for the $10,000 that we're getting from Downtown Alliance.
Without studying it, I can't say with a surety, but I look at what Downtown Alliance has done, Downtown Pro Inc., you know, and I guess the same criticism could go this way as well. You know, could we have the rooftop concert series without downtown Provo Inc.? I don't know, maybe, but I mean, we are talking highly intelligent, highly capable young women. Is that, you know, did this program turn them into doctors and surgeons? I mean, or would they have already ended up that way as well? Would Ms. Richardson still be a spokesperson for that cause? So in determining what's the value that we're getting out, I think I would have a hard time suggesting that we're not getting value out of the downtown program.
But I would say that if Ms. Richardson went when she wasn't Miss Provo to these schools and said, hey, I have this great idea, it would have been a hard sell to get these schools to give them. I know how hard it is to get into these school programs. They're so tight with testing and so many other things that every good cause, you know, doesn't get their attention. And so I think her platform opened doors, and I think it definitely opened doors for her. I know how difficult it is, and if she were just Miss Richardson and not Miss Provo, I think it would have been different. But,
So we can talk about the contributions of these individual pageant winners or participants, but what's the effect on the youth? What role model do these pageant contestants play for our community? And do you want to speak to that?
Well, I know for one thing, there were some bridges burned with the Freedom Festival, for example. When we took over, we had to start really slow building back into Freedom Festival. And at first we said, we'll come and we're going to work hard and we're going to do all of these things for you. And now every year they're calling me and saying, we are so excited to have you back because you guys are such hard workers. And they see not only just the little kids, but you see the older people come up and want to take pictures with Miss Provo. And it's neat to see how many people really do see, oh, it's fun that she's here. It's something different. And I do think she makes an impact on people. You have little girls at all the parades and the events that she's at that come up and they want to wear her crown and they take pictures with her. And I think it does make a big difference in the community.
Whether you like it or not, when a beautiful girl walks into a room, she's friendly, she's cute, she goes around and shakes your hand, she makes you feel like among the bucks. You know, our Miss Provos have just been very good at doing that.
I must comment for me. I wasn't diminishing what they do with downtown Provo. We're talking about 1/15 of the budget. And Miss Provo, at least when I was mayor, was consistently helping the city. So it's really more than just giving scholarships. It's having a pageant and having those people available to do things with the city. We ask a lot of Miss Provo winners. So I don't know what to say.
I really think I'm kind of agreeing with Dave a little bit that our budget is so tight and we're raising fees and if we want to take this over and come up with the $20,000 or the $21,000, I think we need to identify what we're going to give up and make that part of our decision. I don't think we can just add it and say, okay, now we'll just get more money from the budget as we do the budget. I think we need to decide where we're going to give it up and come to an agreement on that before we agree to do it.
So are we then funding $10,000 or are we having to put $21,000 in this budget?
Well, I think 11 has been identified as already funded. That would simply move from our budget to yours. The 10 is unidentified.
If no one's comfortable adding 10 to our budget, then I would be inclined to adjust the things that we are currently funding as you.
You just need to vote on it, folks. Let's see if we have 4 votes to do it.
So I have a comment and a question. The comment is Melissa Richardson really, for me, sold this program. I assume you're aware of it. as a direct result of her contacting the council, we eventually did a joint resolution with the school board, the council, and the mayor on this issue.
I actually came to that meeting with her when she introduced it, and I was telling Susie, we would love all of our girls to have that chance to come and present what they're passionate about and see what they could do to work with you to further that.
That was a great experience. So I feel like that it's worth the money. I want to see the this great program that you essentially saved and resurrected. So that at this point, maybe you're not available to do it, and you have somebody that's going to do it at the quality level that we've done it. Maybe that's a good decision. So I'm in favor of the proposal. I question whether this is the right setting to get into the nitty-gritty about where that 10 comes from. I mean, I would prefer, I'll make a motion that we proceed with this request, as the mayor has outlined it, with moving the 11 from administration budget to the council budget, and then adding 10 more. And with the assumption, from what I'm hearing, that this will not involve a large administrator in the council office. That's the motion.
Is that a substitute motion?
Is that
a substitute motion then?
Yeah, this one.
Is that different?
Go ahead, no, it's a little more complete. I'll go ahead and substitute. I'm in agreement to do that.
Okay.
And I'll second that substitute motion.
And just, I think to be clear, especially for the petitioners, applicants, whatever you want to call them, just so we know what's happening. I want to be clear that the money's not actually there until the budget's approved in June. This is merely a motion to how the budget ought to be prepared, but it's still up to the council to actually approve the budget until the money can actually be there.
And we've actually been fundraising a year in advance because we always wanted to make sure that the money was there the next year. So we're fine for this year. If we're approved for next year, that would be great. So we can cover our scholarships right now.
Thank you. Would it be good for Mr. Jones to restate it now? Given that you just.
Sure. So, I might mangle this because I'm going to restate it in a completely different format because this is just how I see the motion as doing two things. One is transferring the administration of any funds that exist for the sponsorship of the Miss Provo Pageant to the council office, so that the pageant will need to come to the council to receive approval for actually having those funds dispersed and used. And two, for there to be a line item in the draft budget presented to the council next month for in the council budget for $21,000, $11,000 of which will be funded from dollars already in the mayor's office, and $10,000 which will be funded from an as yet unidentified source. That's what I understood the motion to do.
Well, the council's budget is funded through the general fund, so.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to identify, I mean, there can be a lot of stuff in the budget that's going to be different. I don't know that we need to identify today where that 10,000 is coming from.
So I would be okay with that restating, just leaving off that last little bit about identifying the funding source.
And then is that seconded?
Seconded by Mr.
Seconded.
Discussion?
Discussion.
There's a local licensing fee,
$575 for the Miss Utah Scholarship Foundation. I understand that correctly. And so that gets paid to
Miss Utah.
Miss Utah.
That whole bill goes to Miss Utah. Those are all of our fees that we have to pay
That's
to.
everything they do at Miss Utah, their hotel, their crowns.
I imagine Miss Utah also pays a local financing fee.
Yeah, and then they pay something to Miss America. Yep.
Who owns the Miss America pageant?
I don't know who honestly owns it.
Donald Trump?
I don't know.
No, this isn't the Donald Trump. That's the Miss USA line.
That's the Miss USA line.
And that is a beauty pageant. This is a scholarship
Miss
pageant.
USA is, sorry, it's not what, so who is?
This is Miss America, which is a scholarship pageant all the way through. They give more scholarships to
Okay.
women than any other.
All right, that is helpful, thank you.
This one is all based on talent and what they're
interview,
doing in
mostly.
school. You know, they have to be competent women.
The Miss USA, they actually pay fees. It's a beauty pageant. It's for modeling contracts and things. It's a totally different, and I don't actually agree with that one either.
But there is a swimsuit component.
Yeah, it started out as when they very first started Miss America, it started as a swimsuit pageant, and they did it on the boardwalk in Atlanta. And so they've just kind of kept it because it's been tradition. They've debated back and forth. At some point, they may get rid of that. They go back and forth between if it's something
Every year
that,
it's a new vote.
but because they see the value in, like we had talked about earlier, that it shows confidence, it shows that you can be poised in stressful situations, they've decided that it's worth keeping.
And it's only like 5% of their score.
Yeah, it's a low percentage. Most of the score comes from their interview and their talent portion.
We'd love to have you all come in.
And if you guys take over, then we would love if you were giving out the scholarships as well. To be on stage and however you guys want to work that out.
Ready?
So there's a motion, there's a second, and all in favor? So that's Mr. Stewart, Mr. Stoll, Ms. Santiago, and Mr. Connect in favor, and those opposed? Mr. Winterton, Mr. Winterton's on my phone, he hasn't voted yet. Mr. Van Buren, Mr. Harding, and Mr. Winterton, are you there? Are you there, Mr. Winterton, to vote? So we'll say Mr. Winterton is excused, so the motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry, we didn't want to.
We'll return to our first item of business. It's a discussion on a recommendation from the Municipal Council Budget Committee on 2016-2017 budget. As you recall, in one of our previous work sessions, we had the dashboard for our priority for priority-based budgeting. And the administration is looking for a little more clarification on what those, what that entailed. So we sent that back to the budget committee. The budget committee worked on some further clarification. We met with the mayor last week and were able to discuss some of these clarifications, and we're prepared to share those with you today and have further discussion with the mayor. Those items that we can pull these instead. You all have this in your public documents. You can go through and I can briefly describe what's there if that's helpful, or if we're ready to just discuss, we can do that as well. Some of the clarification was that the council's looking to more fully implement a budgeting priorities approach. That we recognize that a full implementation of this approach will require concerted effort over several budget cycles. This isn't something that can be done in a year, but moving in a direction where we can have more information on how programs within departments and are kind of furthering the goals of the city. Did a terrible job of describing this, but so some of the bullet points were executive summary section at the beginning of the budget document should be revised. This is a recommendation of the committee, was that section should be revised to include and reflect the council's priorities in addition to the mayor's letter and other information that's currently included. The second bullet point is the FTE summary included in the financial information section should include a column showing the actual FTE count as of April 1st, 2016. We put a specific date in there because at any given time, sometimes those positions are filled and sometimes they're not, but we just wanted to know at one point in the year, how many of those positions are actually filled. That becomes important if you're looking to increase staff to a certain area. It's good to know how many of those positions were actually filled and they were just not, able to still accomplish the work they need. They really did need more staff, or how much of the issues were that those positions may have had turnover or weren't completely filled. So just knowing how many warm bodies fill those full-time equivalents is important to know. The next bullet point is for each department funded through the general fund and for all enterprise funds, a description of department goals, functions, goals, and accomplishments should be included as at present. In addition, the principal programs within the department should be listed along with a brief description of their intended function. In this context, a program is a grouping of activities related to a specific objective. Examples might include zoning enforcement or youth recreation, emergency medical response, meter reading, etc. For each program within a department, a narrative description of how that program furthers city council goals should be included. And in addition to overall historic, current, and planned expenditures, the budget request for each department should include the approved FTEs for 2015-2016, the actual FTE personnel dedicated to each program as of April 1st, and the proposed FTEs for the next budget cycle, 2016-2017 budget year. The 5-year history of approved positions is helpful and should be retained if practical. Can you scroll down a little bit? The expected revenues generated by each department in the coming year by source. So if they have fees or fines or grants where they're receiving revenues, have those listed. Operating subsidies from the general fund need not be identified separately. In addition to the above, the police and fire departments and all enterprise funds are asked to disaggregate their overall budget requests by program. The total of these requests should sum to the total department budget request. And there's a note that other departments will be asked to provide a similar disaggregation in future years. This is just sort of the beginning if you are asking certain departments to, and fire department seems to already do this. Some of the enterprise funds seem to already do this, so I felt like that was a good starting point. 2016-2017 budget requests for special revenue funds, capital improvement funds, internal service funds, and debt service funds may either incorporate the above guidelines or follow the current budget format. So that was what we discussed and what the budget committee, and I'd like to introduce Tracy Vargas. She is one of our newest members of the budget committee, and appreciate her being here today. And we also have Mr. Armand here and Mr. Larry Walters. Dr. Walters is here with us as well. Appreciate members of the budget committee, and would encourage you to join in the conversation as you see fit. This mayor had some concerns with the recommendations. I think when we finished our meeting, he said we line up largely on most of it, but there were a couple of sticking points, if I can call them that, Mayor. If you would like to share some of the points that you had a little bit harder time.
Sure. Let me start first, maybe at 30,000 feet, and then come into the specifics of this. John and Dustin, please jump in. Sorry, Ben, I'm not loud enough. I know I'm pretty soft-spoken. I want to be clear that we were very supportive of mining data and giving data to the council in a way that they can make good decisions about the budget. That we're very supportive of. We're also supportive of looking to the extent possible at programs within departments. Okay, at programs within departments. Is that Ben? Now okay, maybe I just need to keep this right here by me. There are some programs right now that we can identify that we're already tracking, and it's not very difficult for us to accommodate in this year's budget for those that we're tracking. That looks like Dustin's ready to do that.
That's an example. You keep going. We can show them when we're ready.
Okay, good. So I think we're pretty aligned on those. A couple of, I think, concerns, and this may be where Dustin's going with what he has there, is for the last few years, we have been, at the direction of the council, simplifying the budget and trying to get it to be more digestible for not only council members, but for residents. We view this as a reversal of that trend, and we don't have any problem with that. We just want to make sure that the council is aware of what they're asking for, and in a minute we'll have Dustin show you the information that we're referring to. And so while we are comfortable on those areas, I think one of the areas we're not comfortable and not willing to go is a philosophical change in the way we budget. We're very happy with the way we budget. We think we can document it beyond any question that it's been extremely successful for the city. So certainly fine tweaking and improving it and getting the information that you want. But a wholesale change in the way we budget is really not under consideration by the council right now. I think also one of the points that Kim's alluding to that I push back on is this one that says,
Scroll up.
let's see.
The fourth bullet.
1, 2, 3. For each program within a department, a narrative description of how the program furthers city council goals should be included. For some reasons, I pushed back on this one. First of all, these budgets were delivered by my directors before you did your council goals. Your goals did not exist when they put their budgets together. So any effort on their part to go back and reconcile their budgets with your goals simply would be make work. They would be making things up to show how they aligned with your goals. The second thing is, I think that we need a much greater discussion about, are we budgeting towards council goals, administrative goals, or city goals? And my strong belief is we should be budgeting towards city goals and not council goals or administrative goals. And your council goals have not yet had that vetting of the public to the point where I think we can call them city goals. The third thing is just the simple impracticality of time. We now will present our budget in
2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today. So any major things that you're asking us to do with this budget that we've not already done are really pretty significant and would have to have, for me, a significant reason why we're doing those. And here again, as I pointed out in this case, we would simply be going back, taking a budget that was already submitted, trying to line it up with goals that came about after the budget was submitted, and that didn't seem practical to me. So let me ask Dustin to share with you what he's got right there.
Sorry, I have a large stack of papers to share with. Originally, when we met with the budget committee, we expressed concern, as the mayor did, around our ability to deliver on some of the initiatives in this, and we'd like to, we're pleased to share that we are plan to accommodate many of these things as we're able to. This first one here is a brief cursory look at the actual FTE numbers. And we don't have to delve into the details, but you'll see it's broken out specifically by full-time and part-time employees, and then the difference between the budgeted and the actual positions. And this speaks to, I think, one of our concerns with this item is that that you'll notice that the full-time is actually relatively close. Out of 660 employees, we're within 30 of that amount, but the part-time varies significantly. Due to a number of reasons, particularly around the way that we don't budget for a number of positions, we budget for a dollar amount. So you know that we're going to have $10,000 for recreation instructors. I don't necessarily care how many people that is, as long as the recreation center only spends $10,000 on instructors. So that's where.
Well, the seasonal nature too, where we bring in a lot of people in the summer. So.
Yeah, and so any one point in time is more useful in getting actual numbers. But it may require a more comprehensive analysis along with those. So along with that, I can stand back here.
The other thing I would add on the full-time dollars, the full-time position, that's really where your significant dollars are, and it's really pretty easy to identify. And I think you had questions like, why is this one short, or why is this not short? It's easy to explain those. So I'm happy to provide both, but the value in the full-time comparison is much easier to explain and gives you a real high-level overview of what's happening.
The next pair or two pairs of documents are current or fiscal 16 presentation of a few major areas. So the first set are the mayor's office budget and how it's presented in the fiscal 16 budget.
Let's wait till we get this around to.
Yeah, I'll wait.
Yes.
Is that better? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, so the mayor's one looks identical on the first page. It's different on the second page. And we did that for completeness' sake. So and hopefully there's enough copies I printed off. 15. And so the second set is administrative services and how they're presented in the original 16 budget and how they would be presented under this modified version. So does everyone have a copy of those documents? So the two mayor's office, oh, you are still on the second one? At least as far as the mayor's office one goes, you'll notice that the first page is identical, but if you flip to the second page in that document, you'll see that there's a fundamental restructuring in the way we're presenting the numbers. Prior to the budget we will present in 2 weeks' time, we categorized our expenses and reported the entire funds or department's budget based on those categories. And so the original budget for the mayor's office has personnel line items, salaries, benefits, operating costs, etc. The new format that we're proposing, as advocated by this document, is to report on what we would call orgs or organizations. These are our current structure we already have in our accounting system to account for costs in different areas. And you'll see that on that second mayor's office document, there are several different areas in which the budget is allocated. So rather than determine the categories of those costs, it's instead again by program. And so you'll see there's a few more lines. We've also broken out, there has been some confusion around the numbers in the adjusted fiscal previously 16, but this next year it will be the 16 budget. The adjusted budget has any changes that have taken place due to a large variety of circumstances. So in this next year, we'll provide an original budget, which was the budget adopted at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then an adjusted budget next to it, which will show any of those changes. Those changes can include carryovers from previous fiscal years. You'll see in some of the CIP funds, that is the majority of the adjusted budget is the carried over amount. In other instances, there are unexpected revenues that a department might get, and we'll give them budget authority. For instance, if a police car gets hit, they have an insurance claim, we then give them additional budget authority based on the insurance claim after we've collected the revenue. And so there's, again, it can get very complicated, and we try to convey as much information as we can without getting it too complicated. The second set of larger set.
Question on the first one?
Please do.
Under Mayor CAO, what's the difference between Mayor CAO and Mayor Administration?
So Mayor's Administration, you'll find that when you get the entire budget, that there is typically an administration department in almost every, or administration org or division within every department. Those tend to be a catch-all for department-wide expenses or division-wide expenses, whereas Mayor's CAO would be costs more directly associated with Wayne and other activities around administration of the city.
It doesn't include salaries, obviously.
So that one does include Wayne's salary, and
Mayor CAO would include 25,000.
Maybe it doesn't. And again, this is one of the discussion points that we would like to have. This is, so I apologize. There's not consistency across the city in the way that these orgs are administered. And that's something I also wanted to show in the second set of documents. The second set has how human resources, finance, and information systems was presented in the fiscal 16 budget. The second one, you'll notice, has a different format. It has Administrative Services General Fund, and you'll notice that at the top of that chart is HR's budget. HR only has one org, and so all of their costs are a single line. And you could argue that this is less transparent because previously we were breaking out salaries and operational costs and non-operating costs, and now it's a single line. But the finance division instead, finance division is organized around the different activities that we do: accounting, budgeting, accounts payable, the different activities of the city. And so recognizing that in the instance of the mayor CAO org, there is not consistency across the city, and some orgs are more closely examined and organized more accurately, and others are like the mayor's office, or excuse me, the HR. And for instance, the council is a good example. The council only has one org. Maybe the council should have multiple orgs, whether it's the cost associated with community involvement or the administration aspect of the council could be separate from some of the legislative aspects. I think that this is the concerns that we had with some of these budgeting proposals, is that there kind of needs to be a more holistic discussion, and I think the intent is, as we implement our new Provo 360, that we have council staff involved in the discussions around making some of these changes to these orgs and how we allocate those costs and reflect them so that they can be transparent. And I think our intent is to show you that we are trying to be sensitive to these demands, and we intend to present to you a budget that includes this level of breakdown, if that pleases the council.
And I would also add that we've kind of given departments just kind of the latitude to set up their departments the way that they want or what meets their needs. But I think it makes good sense that we are a little bit more systematic and standardized across the city on how we set it up. And I think this is the perfect time. You know, we're getting ready to work on the chart of account structure for the new Provo 360 project to do that. So I actually think that this presentation, you know, provides more information. It's already raising more questions than you likely would have if you're just looking at the other categories. So, and this is not that hard, but you will find, as Justin's mentioned, some inconsistencies, but we can evolve through it and work through it if this is helpful.
Are there questions or comments about some of the documents I provided?
It'll take me more than a couple minutes to go through it, but so far I'm liking what you're presenting.
And you'll find the goals and accomplishments are identical to last year. This is presented as merely to give you an example, and it doesn't have the 17 numbers. I'm still working on it. We're a little short-staffed. It does, why it's zero. The city will have a budget in 17. It just doesn't in these examples. So.
The list almost went down to zero.
And I'm glad that I haven't made those changes yet, because we're still making budget changes in meetings like this.
Well, and in the prior years when you had your the adjusted budget number, that's all it showed was the adjusted budget, and that kind of drove us a little bit crazy in the finance office, because we were always going back to that and didn't know why, and you had to figure out why it didn't balance with the original budget. So I think it's much more transparent, provides a lot more information, and will likely bring additional questions on why they're different. And I think it's just going to provide better information.
Other questions, council members?
What's important for us is that we are proceeding with this approach in 2 weeks from today, and unless you tell us dramatically different, that this is the direction that we're going, and so we'd love to have any questions or feedback if there's concerns.
Mr. Walters.
My personal view is I greatly appreciate the responsiveness of your staff, and I think this is much more informative and helpful for the council than going with the breakdown in the previous budgets. So I applaud your efforts. I recognize that there are inconsistencies, that this is going to be done in one time. But I just think it's made Herculean efforts, and I applaud you.
I would second what Larry's saying. I greatly appreciate what's been done. I think it's been Herculean for the amount of time you had to do it.
I'd like to say I can take full credit for Dustin being able to do all this.
I did take several classes from him.
I think we pause here to give Dustin a shout out, and John and Dan and the team. We've mentioned it before. A year ago we had Denise who had done this. She could do it in her sleep, and we don't have Denise anymore. And we had one hiccup in between Denise and when Dustin took over that slowed them down even more. And they've not only delivered the budget, but adjusted as best they can to the request of the council in a very short period of time.
I've got quite a few thoughts, but I guess first is I get a question. Are we looking for motion at the end of this, or what? I mean, what's the desired outcome of our discussion? But I would like to make some points as well.
I think the desired outcome is to come to agreement. Is this something that we want to move forward to the administration, given the mayor's concerns? Is there any discussion about the concerns? I think there's worthy of some discussion about what we did bring up. But yeah, I think this is up for our consideration to give the administration more clarification on what we're looking for. Does this meet what the council was hoping to clarify? Are there things we would like to change in this? We just want to make it as easy as possible for the administration to understand what the council's will is. Does this clearly identify some of our concerns? Are there others? Are there, are there things that are in there that we could take out that were not necessarily our primary focus?
Okay. I've got a number, but let me just start with maybe the most important to me is maybe defining what we mean by goals and priorities a little bit. So we had this discussion as we were developing the 9 that we selected. My impression, and I think it's fairly agreed upon, or anyway, my impression of these priorities are these are things that we felt we needed to address in the coming year. These are. I wrote a blog post and sent it to you. I don't know if anyone's read it or not, but I used an analogy of an automobile. If you asked 10 people on the street what's the most important thing in the automobile, you might get things like the engine, the drivetrain, the brake system. There's some different things like that. But if I'm ready to head out on a road trip, I've got my car all tuned up, and I notice that I've got an underinflated tire. Well, my highest priority at that moment before going out on that road trip is to inflate that tire. So if people look and say, well, what's your priorities? And it's like, well, the most important thing right now is my inflating my tire. People might say, well, that's kind of ridiculous. The engine's the most important thing. Well, but that's not the thing that needs the attention. So I see our 9 as kind of our underinflated tires, things that we need to fix. I wouldn't say that those 9 are the most important things in the city overall. And so when in the first bullet point, executive summary well, let's jump to the 4th, or even just say, I would hate with this idea of budgeting 2 priorities. I would hate for the expectation to be that we should that the majority of our funding should go to our 9 priorities. Maybe the majority of our funding should go to public safety, to our police department, even though that's not one of our 9 priorities. But that is an overarching priority, I would say, even though it's not one of our 9 that we want to focus on the day. So when we're doing this stuff, as we convert over to a budget-based priority-based budget, I think we need to go through an additional process of defining what those priorities are, because I think that the process we went through to identify the 9 that we have, I think, is focused differently than what our budget should be focused on. So I think if we looked at our budget, we could go back and say, well, we're spending a lot of money on this. Is our police department's public safety a priority? Oh yeah, it definitely is, and so that should be really high on our priorities. And then we have kind of this more temporary priority list of these are the things that we need to address. And I'd like to see both of them in the budget. Like, if there's an area that we're spending a lot of money on, we say, well, that's actually not a priority. I hope that would get trimmed back. So I think that process gets done. But then we can also say, well, right now, zoning compliance is high, and so maybe we need to show how our budget this year changed from last year to address this more transient priority, but our overall budget is aligned with our overarching priorities.
So if you're adding, if you're adding 9 police officers, well, what is your goal in doing that? Well, what does that get us? We're adding 9. Do you think, okay, well, public safety is really important?
Where did 9 come from?
Or, I don't know. Didn't you say 9? I'm like,
sorry, when I'm saying 9, I mean our 9 priorities.
Oh, 9 priorities. Okay, so
I'm not saying.
If we're adding police officers, 1 or many, what does that get us? What goal are we trying to accomplish by adding that 1 officer or
that 2 or 3 officers, however many years you're thinking we add, because for public safety reasons, yeah, we're concerned about public safety. Because that wasn't identified as a goal this year, what end outcome are we getting with that 1 officer? What are we achieving with that?
So right there, that question is kind of the change. Like how were we last year? What do we want to be this year? What's the difference if we're adding a police officer? So, and to me, that's more of like the 9 priorities that we selected are kind of those change priorities, things that need to be addressed. Where I think if we look at our budget now and it has how many millions for police? 17 million for police. Now, even if we don't change that, still 17 is a huge amount, and that should be reflected in our priorities, not our 9 things that need to be addressed. But if we're spending $17 million on something, it better be a pretty important thing to us. And so that's that list of more static things, those overarching things that don't get tweaked year to year. So to me, the 9s are the tweaks. We have not, I don't think we have identified our main list of priorities, our overarching priorities. If public safety isn't one of our priorities, why are we spending $17 million on it?
Okay. And I guess I see that as if crime was down this year from last year, and if crime was a concern, if it was one of our concerns, if it was what we're hearing from our constituents that there's an uptick in crime, and we actually show that there was a down, that there were a decrease in instances of crime in general, then that's where you make those decisions, right? I think we're making decisions based on what our constituents are telling us and based on what the outcomes are that we're looking for. What are the constituents saying? What are our statistics telling us? And where is that getting us? I mean, closer to what our citizens want. We're representing our citizens. What is it that they want? How are we getting there? And so that's where you're talking about the tweaking year to year. But when you're looking at the things that we do as a city, we have this many employees, and this is how we're running, and things seem to be running fairly well. I don't know. I guess you're saying make that a priority too, that because we have this much money in this department, that's a priority.
I think we need a list of what our city priorities, what our city goals, our city values are. And right now, I mean, I'm sure we could all kind of come up with, but we don't have a formal list. And I think that the main budget should be based on those. And it already is. It's been unstated. And I think one of the values of budget-based priority-based budgeting is that once we have that defined values, we can then evaluate, is our budgeting aligning with these values? And if not, maybe, oh wait, hey, we're spending this much money on this program, but we actually don't value it. Maybe it makes sense to cut it and better fund these priorities.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to try to say a couple things that Dave said in a slightly different way, because what he's articulating is extremely important. The budget does not have the ability, it is not nimble, and cannot bend at the whim of council priorities, and I don't believe it should. Your priorities change from year to year. They might change from 6 months to 6 months. And the budget is, the only thing I disagree with Dave on is we do have that list, and it's the Vision 2030 document. Until it's redone, that is the adopted list by the Municipal Council and the administration. Now, I think we're very close to merging that document into a new document with the general plan, and I think we'll all be able to come in harmony on those things. But that is exactly right. That you can budget towards over a multi-year period of time. But the second thing I'd point out is when we presented to the budget subcommittee, we actually took your 9 priorities and color-coded them. Only 2 of those 9 needed funding in order to accomplish them. Priorities frequently just need attention and not funding. And so, we'll show you that document when we show you the budget, and we've tried to respond to the fine-tuning that you talked about. I think we'll be able to show you that we have responded pretty well to those because we were able to. Now, we may not have been able to, right? If you had come to us and said, well, Miss Provo is a priority, I don't know that you would have seen us respond the same way we did if you said zoning enforcement's a priority to us. So we take those and be as nimble as we can with those council priorities, and as they change, we try to adapt to those the best we can. But overall, the budget is not built to change based upon a year-to-year change in priorities.
What I said to the next point is on timing. I think, a point is well made that the discussion we're having now should probably be applied to the 2016-2017 budget. All that we're discussing now should probably focus on.
So the budget we're preparing what we call the 17 budget.
Okay.
That will be delivered in 2 weeks.
Okay.
The 18 budget will be delivered in a year.
So what we're talking about probably should be informing the 2018 budget. And I think as a council, we need to get in the habit of maybe having these discussions earlier. I mean, unless we're happy talking a year out, but having these discussions earlier so that the administration can respond.
Can I respond to that comment? I agree, we should start, as soon as we receive the budget, we should start. I mean, we should already be talking about the next budget. I totally agree with that point. I also feel, though, that since I've been on the council, I've been told every year that it's too late to make any changes, basically, to the budget. And I think that's backwards. I think that the state gets their budget from the governor and they say thank you very much, and then they go to work doing what they feel like they need to do to make that budget work for our state. And so I think that's the beginning of the work, not the end. I don't think that we just accept the mayor's budget and say, oh yeah, there's really no time to change this. No, that's the beginning, of the work. But like you say, in order to do that, in order to make sure that it makes sense and that we're getting the priorities of our citizens and that we actually understand where everything's going and we can see, like you said, kind of program by program, we can see where everything's going and what makes sense and what we're spending money on and what we should be spending money on, and all of those things are important. And in order to get that kind of system, we need to start today getting that kind of system, right? We needed to start. I mean, and that's what we've been working towards. It's been a slow process, but that's what we've been working towards. But I disagree when we get the budget that's can't really affect change. I really disagree with that. So.
Point taken.
Another aspect of this for my own personal finances. So I look when I go over like my credit card, which generally is most of everything I spend. So it's a good way just to say, gee, what am I spending my money on? And I'll do that occasionally just to see if it's going in a direction I don't want, if I'm spending too much on things that I need to cut back on, or maybe I need to get solar panels or something because my electric bill is too high. Whatever choices I want to make, I have to have an exact breakdown of how much money is going into my automobiles and insurance and just the different categories. And the more categories of breakdown I can get, the more I can start to identify outliers and problems and questionable items. So the 360, the detail is really needed to be able to see what we're doing right now, what we can potentially do better. I do agree with Dave's analysis of there's certain things that we're doing, whether it be public safety, parks and rec, and that goes along with what just analyzing and looking at exactly what we're doing, and you could say by default, by looking at what you're spending your money on, those are your priorities. So you look at it and say, well, is this really aligning with the Vision 2030, or are tweaks that we need to make, the adjustments? Because generally speaking, that's what we are doing, is adjusting things that are already working, but maybe they're not working correctly. Sometimes we maybe come up with a brand new program, but often we're just kind of massaging what's already happening.
Mr. Harding and then Mr. Walters.
I was going to go to a different topic, so.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to get some clarification from regarding this last comment about the level of detail, because one of the things we've heard from the administration is that this is a step back from simplification that they've been pursuing for several years. So are you interested in knowing how much money the city spends on paper clips and toner cartridges, or are you interested in knowing how much they spend on web services in the mayor's office versus something else in the recreation department?
Well, my initial reaction to that is I would like to think that every department has their own idea of what they should be tracking in order to be efficient. And that may or may not be someone else's idea. And if they think they need to track paper clips, I would question that. But certainly you want to track office supplies in general. And if the office supplies are crazy, then you need to look deeper as to why.
But as a council member, do you want to see that level of detail?
Do I want to see it? I think it needs to be, you have to have enough detail available, whether we pour over that or whether it stays more in-house where it's there if it's asked for. But if you don't have enough detail in your maintenance budget, you never know how much you're spending on tires, for example. And 100 years ago, tires was the #1 issue when you got a flat every 10 miles.
On that same issue, I don't want to have some credit. I don't care if you want to use your thought. But I think that the two things that I think we've been working on the assumption in the budget committee, because it was what our original charge was to help develop metrics and make it easier for the council to decide where they wanted to take the city budget, because it was their job to approve it. I think the friction I've noted as we've done this process has been what the council sees as their responsibility to the budget. Do they just approve the document that's handed to them, or do they shape that document? And if they do shape that document, how much are they involved? And I think that the issue of, it's classic in this issue of, do you put the council's goals for the year or not? The goals are very helpful, even if they're not all articulated as funding. As the mayor pointed out, there might only be 2 of the 9 that will be funding priorities. However, there's emphasis, as he noticed, of the way the rest of the budget is going to be implemented that year. That there is an acknowledgement that the administration, with the existing funding, can do exactly what the council wants to do. And for the citizen, it's very helpful to understand that why my program was cut or de-emphasized. The budget didn't change, but Little League had 1 less league this year. And it's because the council asked for something to happen that didn't necessarily have a direct budget line item, because we're not that granular, but it did have an emphasis in the implementation. And I think that's why it's very, very useful for citizens and for transparency is to say this is the council's goal. Now the council may have unlimited numbers of goals. A previous council adopted the 2030 as a vision statement, right? So you can break all those down. You can have all those goals as well. But in terms of the actual expressing and communicating with citizens and helping them be involved and giving you feedback on what's important to them, it's really helpful for them to know that these were the priorities for this year. And that doesn't mean that they're the only priorities. And I think this distinction between what is the administration and what is the cities and what is the council's, at least as far as Utah law goes, the council decides what is the city goals in this type of government. If you look at the case law, that's all it says is that they're the ones that determine. They have the policy. They have the power of policy. And there's a series of cases. You can read them yourself in terms of who does it. Now, in terms of realistically, how does that work? No, I mean they're not going to have time to make every policy decision at every level of government. But in terms of what their one control over government, because you have a strong mayor form of government, is the purse, right? That's their policy. And so I'm not making this up. You can go to the justices of the Utah Supreme Court who articulate this. And so all I'm suggesting is that you've got to decide as a council. We've been working on the assumption that what you want is more data to be more involved in the budget. If that's not what you want, then there's a different process. Then you see a school process.
I cannot sit here and have somebody articulate that the mayor is not involved in policy in the city. I just cannot accept that. And this is probably not the time to have that debate, but I can't let this just go by uncontested.
Yeah, we're both entitled to our opinion. And so, but in terms of what we were asked to do, I'm describing to you what I understood, at least I was asked to do by seeing on the committee. And so, and when Hal Miller originally gave us the charge, it was to get him more data, to make finances more transparent to the city members, to the citizens of the city, so they can know, and to get the council the information they need so they could develop policy and direct the budget in ways that they thought that was necessary. So, and again, you can disagree with that, and I could be wrong. I will concede that I could be wrong. But in terms of the things that we're asking for, and the reason that you're going, the proposal to go to a budget priority is to help the council be more involved. And so,
I think it's relevant to the extent that if there are council members here who feel that way, we're just not going to agree. And if we need at some point to spend more time on this, then we do. But if the council's coming at this from the perspective that the mayor is not involved in policy in the city, we have a substantial gap in agreement.
yeah, I think that's a mischaracterization of what I was saying. So I was saying that the council has responsibility for the budget. They're the ones that approve. They have budgetary authority, and that's how they affect policy in the city. So.
You're coming from the perspective that you create policies for your individual
No.
departments, and that's how you.
The governing body. So there's lots of levels of policy, right? Council does have the legislative ability to make legislative policy, but that doesn't give them an exclusive right to make policy for the city, such as goals and aspirations and visions.
Who has the exclusive role?
In my opinion, it's elected leaders. It's something that we share.
I guess I'm not quite sure. But as far as, I'm not sure what you're saying. Sorry.
If you'd like to have a more detailed discussion, this is obviously not the place for it. I'm happy to have that discussion. But if the council's coming at this, that they view that they have the exclusive right to set goals for the city, I'm just not going to let that pass without.
I agree with the mayor. When I was mayor, I set policy for I attempted to implement policy that had to be approved by the council. Many of the policies I implemented had to be approved by the council, but they certainly didn't always come from the council. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I think it's a mistake to say this policy belongs exclusively to the council.
I would agree.
And I don't think anyone said it, but only the council can approve the budget.
No disagreement on that. Yeah, but that's not what you said.
So I have, it's one of the comments that just spurred a thought too, where the last couple of years you've asked multiple times when we come to you from the budget committee or from council, you said, where does this fall in the council priorities list? Priorities, is it high, low, I mean, where does this fall? And you, the last 2 years, have really wanted to know exactly where the council's priorities were. So that's why we went through this whole effort at the beginning of this year to make sure that those council priorities were set, so that you would understand where the council was at with our priorities. And I feel like we've tried to deliver that, and now we're trying to clarify what those are so that you have more clarification on what we mean by what our priorities were. And I think this is our at least my feeling is, we want to know what the priorities are within departments. We want to know program by program how these stack up. We want to know kind of when we're looking at things, when you make decisions regarding budget, who gets this money, who doesn't, you have that information. I would hope you have that information, that you're deciding how things stack up within departments. And I think that's what we're asking for. We kind of want to know, program by program, how these stack up.
So,
and you can make a better informed decision when you have a little more detail like that, not just the detail that we've been given, and I know you were trying to make it simpler, and I guess we're asking for more detail, and I think we're almost there. I think we're close. I think we're almost there, right? We're headed down the right path, and so I don't want to like throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? I think we're moving that direction, but I feel like we're asking for the same things in some ways. You're asking for what our priorities are. What's important to us? We're asking, how do these things stack up by department? And we want to understand how money is being allocated. And when you allocate money, you kind of show how things stack up. That's how you show that. That's how you move things forward. And we're just looking for more information, more detail. I don't know. That makes sense.
Having been a member of the Budget Committee, I agree with what David said. Basically, is what we want is more information, more detail, so those who want to become more involved with the detail of the budget have the information available where we can be. And we do budget to priorities. When we budget money, look at at least I hope we do, when we look at what we're spending the money for. We talked about it today, Miss Provo. Is this really a priority where the council wants to spend their money? And so I really don't think the Budget Committee, at least my time with it and listening to the mayor, we don't feel that the mayor doesn't have a responsibility to set policy. Basically, the mayor is to implement the policy set by the council, but the role of the mayor is you're going to set policy, right?
So I think it would be delightful to schedule some time, maybe a retreat, to talk about how we see each other's roles. I think that I have expressed a great deal of respect for your role. I'm not sure with all of you that that's reciprocated.
Reciprocate.
I said it carefully because I said not sure with all of you that that's reciprocated.
Mr. Wright.
If now's a good time to change the direction a little bit.
We do need to wrap this item up pretty soon because...
Come on, this is fun. Don't change the direction.
Okay, well, we have talked about budgeting for priorities. We've talked about how it's going to be a multi-year implementation. We've talked about a lot of different things and trying to do it. There's different opinions, maybe how to approach it. Often it seems like we're agreeing in a lot of principles and maybe just disagreeing on some of the details. But I come away from the presentation feeling like, wow, we are further along, or we're headed more in the right direction than I thought we were. You know, there's been some talk, well, you know, Provo 360 is going to be coming online, but I love that we're not saying, well, let's wait 18 months for it to, you know, because it's going to be partly in 18 months, partly in 36 months. But rather than saying, let's wait 18 months and see what we've got, we're talking now's the perfect time to start defining these things. I'm thrilled to hear that. And it seems to me that, you know, we talk about the Herculean efforts. I think with what I'm hearing, we've made a very good first step for this first year, and we're having the conversation so we know where we're going to be going in the next couple of years. I'm thrilled with this. I'm thinking, you know, one thing in the trainings we always were told, like, you have to have administrative buy-off on this, that people have to be committed to this. And so I'm looking at what we have here, what we've been presented. I'd love to make tweaks to this document to say, you know, to kind of maybe encapsulate the things that they're able to do right away, maybe define a little bit more of the next year, and if there are concerns, you know, as long as we feel like we're getting to as long as we kind of have the same end goal out in 3-4 years at the end of this multi-year process, if we want to take if the administration wants to take a slightly different path than the one that we're proposing up here, wonderful, as long as we're heading in the right direction. And I think I was really encouraged, and so I would like to work with the administration and say, okay, you know, here's what we thought the first step should be, and if they have concerns and want to make some tweaks to that, wonderful, as long as we're heading in the right direction.
So Mayor, the highlighted item for each program within a department, a narrative description of how the program furthers city council goals should be included. Is that the one piece that you're uncomfortable with, that were out, that you would feel comfortable with this document?
think that what's been presented to you today has been described as a Herculean effort to move towards what the council would like to see. I don't see any purpose to go through this point by point. We're going to do better on some of these than others on some of these. There's nothing really that you're going to decide today that's going to change what you see in 3 weeks.
But moving forward, this is a multi-year,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it mentions in here, it's multi-year, this is something that's.
If you want to address the highlighted area, I think we've got to come to better understanding what the city council goals are. From my understanding, those were presented to the council, were quickly adopted with almost no public dialogue, almost no dialogue amongst yourself. And that's what I'm saying. Before I radically change my budget to head in that direction, I would like a little bit more understanding about what city goals are.
Can you put our goals up there on the board? Because those were actually from Vision 2030. Those were, and you felt like Vision 2030 was vetted, and our 4 goals actually came from.
In 4 areas.
So 4 areas of Vision 2030.
This may be a question of terminology. There may be some
Right.
miscommunication here.
So
I took those to be priorities. I didn't realize that you were talking about the 4.
We're on the cusp, so a separate dialogue that's going on is getting what we call Vision 2030, and that name is quickly becoming out of date, merged with the general plan, which is real important to some council members. As soon as that document is complete, which I think we're very close on, I'm happy to declaring those city goals and budgeting towards those. That's my intent, rather than budgeting towards individual priorities that change frequently. Priorities should be paid attention to, and we should try to budget towards those, but they don't trump those citywide goals.
How would you pay attention to those priorities? Can you explain if they should be paid attention to? How would you pay attention?
Well, in the document that we showed you in the meeting last week was each one of those and whether or not they needed funding and whether or not we funded them.
And how about your department heads as far as attention? Should they know what they are? How do you get those in front of your department heads? What does that look like?
I think it's case by case. Some of them have nothing to do with the majority of my departments. Some of them have everything to do with just one department. So I think it's case by case.
So
if you're saying you want me to embolden on their forehead all of your priorities, I just don't see that as something that we'll ever do.
Well, I think this highlighted point is to get the goals, the city goals, in front of the department heads, so that they actually know what the council's goals are, what their priorities are.
But you just said the council goals.
And we're all representative of people in our city. I represent a district. And so it's not my goal, it's the district that I represent. These are the things that I'm hearing from them through newsletters, through personal conversations, through complaints, through meetings with Carrie Balls and you and a group of people, trying to figure out 12 different homes in the Tree Street neighborhood. I mean, these are things we've been working on, you've been working on with us. And so
how do you prioritize those over city goals?
I don't think they have to compete. I don't think they have to be one above the other. I think that.
So how do I budget towards both of them?
What you said, you don't have to budget towards all of them. You have 2 that you this year need to budget towards.
No,
but
now you're back. You've switched back to priorities.
Okay. To budget against the goals. Okay, so if your department heads never look at the goals and they don't know what the goals are, then how can we move those forward? Or if you just decide which departments need to see what the goals are, and some do and some don't.
You keep switching back and forth between priorities and goals.
Okay, let's stick to goals. Okay, the 4
Because what I said about priorities was some of them apply to some departments and not to all of them.
Okay, so we're talking about priorities.
Okay. So then my question to you on goals is, does it make sense to have 2 sets of goals?
I think if you have 9 goals for Vision 2030, or
Now are you going back to priorities?
I'm going to Vision 2030.
Right.
How many goals are in Vision 2030?
Yeah, so that's where we're in harmony on, and we
Okay.
currently do that.
Okay, so but you can't in a budget year, you can't put the entire Vision 2030 and then say we're going to achieve all those goals. It's not possible. We're going to achieve all these goals, and we're going to achieve all these priorities, and this is in our budget document. This is what we're going to do this year. It's not possible. This is, like you said, this is beyond 2030. This is years and years in the future. So for this next year, this is what our constituents are asking for. This is what they want. We represent our constituents. This is what their concerns are for this year. How do we move those forward? What is your format for moving those forward? If it's not this, what is your format?
Okay, so this is what I'm not understanding. We're merging general plan with Vision 2030, and we will have one set of citywide goals. Is that correct? I mean, are you?
I don't know, because some of these are being done by different departments. I mean, as far as who's doing these rewrites, right? Is it committee? Is it people from all over the city? Did you send out an email and say, hey, if you want to be part of this committee, and invite every single person in the city to contribute, and then find a way of systematically, inviting certain people, I don't know, so that it's fair, so that it's random, so that it's not just random picking? I mean, how do you get a select group from the city that's randomized, that's not just handpicked to put some of these priorities together? Because we could argue the same thing about Vision 2030, as you're saying to us. It's our goal, it's on a whim. I mean, this is what we're hearing from our constituents. You put groups together that put together 2030. And it might have been what those priorities were at the time. And I think that there are a lot of good things in 2030. I'm not saying that it's a problem, but I'm also saying that the way those committees were put together, you could argue that too, that the information you're getting is from a select few, or from these departments, or from, is it really representative of our entire city?
What we asked the mayor and our staff, the mayor's staff and our staff to do is take Vision 2030 and take what we had done, and you were going to merge them together. So I think I think it's pretty clear how we're going to do it, Kim. Right? Isn't that what you understand?
Yeah, we were in great harmony on how to get to that city goal.
I thought we were going to merge those two things together, and we put your staff and our staff to work on that. They would approve it.
And I think we ought to reserve judgment until we've actually done that.
Well, no. In fact, that's what they're going to put it together, and then it's going to come to both of us to see if we agree. That's what I thought the understanding was.
Yeah, and the point I'm making is, I mean, they're not randomly selected citizens throughout the city. I mean, they're handpicked, right? And they're put on boards. I mean, anyway. Sorry.
I'd like to clarify also something I said, because it's been recorded. The mayor can set priorities or goals or vision, whatever, but it has to be implemented by the council through ordinance or through budgeting. So you can have all the great ideas you want, as I had. They were great ideas. But if the council didn't approve them through ordinance or budgeting, they don't go anywhere. So I think that's the balance, I think.
I was just going to say, you mentioned earlier that we need to move on. I would like to make a proposal before the end, so I never come to know. But I kind of want to break this apart a little bit. I look at where we were last year and what we're going to see for this budget. I think this has made a great step in the format of the budget, moving towards budgeting for priority principles. I think this is a great step, and so I would propose that we ask our budget committee to work with the administration on, since we're going to be presented in a couple of weeks, probably aren't going to get much format change, but I think this is already a wonderful step forward. So we ask our budget committee to work with the administration and plan, just propose what will we see next year? What are the next steps? How are we going to take the next step towards that?
So that's what this is. I mean,
so that's not for this year?
This is for this year. This is moving forward. I mean, this is a multi-year. This is multi-year. An explanation of what we're looking for, multi-year, not just this year.
Okay.
Because we realize this is going to take years to implement.
Just a comment on that blue line there. Going along with what the mayor said, that some of our goals don't need funding and maybe don't apply to every department. So as I read that, we get down to narrative description of how the program in each program, each department, that's a lot of programs potentially, and how that program furthers city council goals, if any. If any, I would include if any should be included, because if it clearly doesn't apply. Why strain and struggle trying to
And I would agree
bring
with that
something?
worry.
So I guess my question would be, if it doesn't apply, why are you spending money?
Well, because our 9 priorities or
I'm not
whatever.
talking priorities, I'm talking about 4 goals.
Yeah, but that's it says city council goals, not the 4 goals. I mean, maybe semantics.
Because I would agree with the mayor that you're not going to make major structural changes in the budget in a given year just to respond to a pressing need right now. But you're going to have those 4 or 5 overarching goals that are going to guide you going forward. And if a program is not contributing to one of those 4 or 5, why are you doing it?
Right, but then I might label it just city goals instead of city council goals. I don't know.
Okay, I mean, I have to take out the word council there.
Just talking, just brainstorming.
I think we've got a lot of terminology we need to work out so we can communicate efficiently and effectively. I fully agree, and I think that gets at the heart of the priority-based budget. If something's not a priority, not talking about our 9 areas that we need to tweak, but these overarching city goals, we shouldn't be spending money on it. And so I think by developing a structure in our budget that looks more like this, which I don't know if the right one, I think that will facilitate that review of the budget, and it's what we're hoping for. So I kind of want to split these 2 apart. I think we're not going to change the format in the next 2 weeks. So I think, we talk about this being a multi-year process, but here's our endpoint. Here's where we're at. I'd like to see incremental changes. This year we're at this step, which I think is a great step forward. Where do we want to be at the next step? The next year, maybe even plot out how we're going to get there in 4 years. And then separately, I think we need to talk and get clear amongst ourselves what we mean when we say priorities and goals, and is there city goals, city priorities, are there city council priorities? Just define that a little bit better so that we can communicate more efficiently.
So, and it remind me, Mayor, in our committee meeting, it seemed like the main concern that you had with this highlighted area was that there's not enough time for your department heads, and you feel like it's already passed, and to make them go back, and you mentioned today, to make them go back and look at this, it seems like you're just making work for them and to try to figure out how it fits. And so, are you okay with that going forward for the next 3 years?
It all comes down to the difference between the city council goals and the city goals. I don't want a budget towards city council goals. I want a budget towards city goals.
And I feel like they're the same. But.
I'd like to make a motion that we refer this back to the budget committee and see if the council members on the budget committee can confer with the mayor, see if we can get a little closer to a consensus on something like that.
Is that what it comes down to? Council? If we took off council, you're good with the rest of it?
I think I've been pretty clear.
Okay.
I mean, you're
city
trying to force
goals.
me to say, I don't, what I think, what I care, what I think about is not important. You're going to demand of the administration that they budget towards city council goals without regards to how the administration or I personally feel about the goals as an elected official.
Point of order, Madam Chair, and I'm trying to make a motion here. So can I finish? I think we're out of time. We've got some pressing issues. Our time sensitive. We've got a closed session that starts at 1. It's very important. I don't think this meeting at this time is the proper place to iron out these critical difficulties. So,
Can I make one comment?
So to finish my motion, I would just move that we refer this back to the budget committee and see if we can hash this out.
I'm looking, so Mr. Is Mr. Ardmore ready to do the next item? Or I was kind of wondering, and we could skip to Mr. Maxfield's item. I was kind of wondering, I was allowing discussion to go a little bit, but I'm happy to move on here. Okay. All right, so the motion is to
I'll second
Just a second. First to continue this, I'm sorry, could you restate the motion?
The motion is to refer this back to the budget committee and try to iron out some of these differences that were, I don't think we have time to bring this committee. Bring it back.
Is there a second? Mr. Hardy? All in favor? Thank you, Mr. Budget Committee. Appreciate you taking the
Larry, are you there?
Yes, I am here. When you go to make the motion, please state it in the microphone so that I can make sure I hear it clearly.
Yes, we can try to do better at that. So the motion was to refer this item back to the budget committee and have them work on hashing out some of the wording changes and then bring it back to the council. Are you in favor of that motion?
Yes.
Okay, so the voting is unanimous. That? Okay. We lost. So let's, if you're ready to go, okay. Yes. So the next item is discussion on an ordinance amendment. This is item number 5. Yeah. To Provo City Code Sections 14.41 and 15.03.300, 15.03.310, 15.04.120, and 15.06.030 to in order to clarify code and update criminal requirements for planning applications into our work.
Okay, thank you. So these, well, let me back up. We've been in discussions with the Planning Commission over the last year about
the microphone.
Well, she needs, if Aaron will speak up, so she can repeat the motion.
Well,
Because
we
you
can
can't
get.
hear the motion at all.
How about,
Well, Gary can't hear.
I don't think any of these next items have motions.
Okay.
And how about if I restate the motion and I'll talk loud?
Okay. There you go.
start over. Thanks.
So good.
Okay. So we've been in discussions over the last year with the Planning Commission on processing administrative items, items that, if they meet code, must be approved, and really what the Planning Commission wants to focus on. So a lot of these amendments before you today have come from those discussions. So the first one is with home occupations. Those have been dealt with administrative hearings historically in our department. So we're just updating the code to reflect that. And then also updating a couple issues that came up with those home occupation permits in last year with the gross vehicle weight ratings of trucks and large vehicles in residential areas. So we've updated that and tried to make that more consistent and more clear for people that are submitting those applications. The next section talks about project plans and subdivisions. So in here it proposes that subdivisions would be handled at staff level rather than going to Plan Commission. If they meet all the standards and codes of the city and have been approved by all the city staff, that we could just take those and record them with the city recorder and the county. And the last bit is kind of updating the city, so we're not requiring paper applications anymore, allowing people to submit electronically to try to make that a more efficient process as well. So, questions?
Any questions, Mr. Arnold? I have a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that one of the revisions is to allow staff to approve a minor subdivision with 10 lots or less without a public hearing. Is that part of the subdivision one?
Correct, yeah.
And I guess legally, is that must be permissible?
Say that again.
To allow staff to approve a minor subdivision with 10 lots or less without a public hearing. to remove that from planning commission's possibility and give it back to planning staff. Is that, am I understanding that right?
Yeah, so the state doesn't require a hearing on
State
that.
doesn't require a hearing, we've just been doing that?
Yeah.
Just a further clarification, my understanding is that this would not change what comes to the council. It would only change what.
Correct. Items that have been coming to the planning commission that could just be done by staff.
Right. And is that one of those where if you check off all the boxes, then the planning commission just basically has to approve it because it's
Exactly. We're trying to clean up some of those things so they can focus more on bigger policy ideas.
Right. That one just seemed bigger than the other ones.
Sure.
So allow staff to approve subdivision. But it's gone through all of the,
Yeah, I mean, if it meets all the lot requirements and all the,
then all you're doing is bringing that to the commission and then they have to.
and then we record at the county, yeah.
Help me out, I'm new still. I don't know how long I'll be able to use that excuse, but, so the council will hear zoning changes, proposals for zoning change, as well as plans, development plan, what are they called? Project plans. Preliminary project plans. Is that still true that or do we only see those preliminary project plans when we're being asked to consider a?
Yeah, you're not actually approving the preliminary plan. Your planning commission has approved that under the context of either the zone you're requesting or a zone that you're creating. And so that approval has already been granted by the planning commission. It's just with your material, so you have context behind the request you're being asked to approve.
And since this does not affect rezoning questions, this is only affecting items that have been going to the planning commission that, I guess I'm restating what Mr.
Yeah, that's
Stoll
correct.
said. So this is not going to change anything that we see. No. This is only changing items that would only be seen by the planning commission and items that they would be fairly, administrative, not legislative. And this has also gone before the planning commission and they have recommended.
Correct, yeah, they recommend unanimous approval. I mean, they've been part of these discussions, so they knew it was coming.
What other questions?
Just a comment, I love the part where you took out the 10 paper copies and that was
That was kind of antiquated.
All right, so,
Quick question. So, like the bottom right-hand one, 1503, 310, final project plan, submittal requirements, was done by the planning commission. And if you didn't like it, you could appeal to a certain body. You can appeal anything that the planning commission decides to, what, Board of Adjustment or to some...
Right, Board of Adjustment typically.
Typically, yes. So if you change it to the Coordinating Review Committee, who do you appeal their decision if you don't like it?
The appeal would still be the same.
Thank you.
Yeah, any administrative action relative to land use is appealable to the Board of Adjustment, whether it's planning commission or staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next item, number 6, the discussion on a request by Ivory Homes for an ordinance amendment to section 4.49E, and 14.49E, 4.6 regarding the allowance for both side yards to have a minimum setback of 5 feet instead of 1 5-foot and 1 8-foot setback in a single family residential area. This will be introduced by Mr. Brian Meister.
Thank you. First of all, there's probably a correction needs to be made on the references on the numbers. They both come from 1449E050, and I think that was an error on our transmission over to council. So just noting that they are in the same section. Broadview Shores, the original rezoning for this area was granted in 2009 because of revisions of Lakeview Parkway, which is this area on the west portion now, and the ownership changes and some other factors. The plan was redone and then adopted by, approved by the council in, I think it was May of 2015. The last item that was required to go with that was a design guideline book, and that was adopted last, I believe it was August or, I'm sorry, it was May of last year. And so the project's been going on. Ivory's developed this part that's basically shown in the circle at the bottom of the picture, and that's now been paved and their home's being built. As they got into their project, they noticed a couple of items, in particular lots 131 and 132, which are shown here, but it's typical through the development. If you know that, remember some of the elements of development, you have a mixture of lot sizes. You have R1 5s, 6s, 8s, and 10s through there. The largest ones you can see over by the LDS Church site on the right-hand side are the large 10,000s. What they noticed, though, as they went through in these areas, you had elements which were defined out as public utility easements. It showed it as a 5-foot and 8-foot easement, which will alternate on different sides. And their request, because of it limited some of the homes they looked to put on by a couple of feet, that if they could get a variance, or I'm sorry, a change in the text. And I should mention this is an ordinance because the rezoning is actually codified in section 14, which are the references, besides just the plan book. But if they could get a change that allowed a 5-foot and a 5-foot setback on these lots that allow a larger variety of home sizes to go in. As stated through here, a lot of these easements are for public utilities. However, public utilities really don't use side yard easements. And so they're really kind of an unnecessary easement. They were, again, codified in the text on 14, and the request was to change that to a 5 and 5-foot easement rather than a 5 and an 8. Ivory also asked to do that on the 8,000 square foot lots, that they could also have a change in that area. This went to the Planning Commission. Staff had recommended it just be done on the smaller lots because it did allow a better home design for that site. But at the time, we didn't feel it was necessary for the 8,000 square foot lots. The Planning Commission felt otherwise and felt that that did allow some more variety on the 8,000s also. And so they were made the recommended change to the section, which is 6B2, which would then parallel the same thing, would allow that 5-foot, a reduction of the 5-foot setback with permission from the utility companies. Staff doesn't have any problem with that change. And so we've just forward that to you as the recommendation. Are there any questions?
Just clarification. So on the...
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have done this too.
R1,
Do the home,
so which was the first one?
R15s and
So the
R16s.
R15, so the 5,000 square foot lot, they want to go from an 8 to a 5, both sides.
Right. And then the other, I think this is the one that shows, you can see on the right side, it doesn't really show, but a 5-foot and a 7-foot is really all they were looking for on that area. So it's not necessarily to see how big and wide they can build the homes, but it's, you know, if that variation, they don't have to, you know, request amendment. So on the larger lots, that would apply too, than on the 8,000s, but not on the 10s.
If we're doing Ivory Homes, shouldn't we be doing it generally?
This one's more of a planned community, and coincidentally, we have discussed that with the Planning Commission and to bring some items forward that relate to looking at possible changes to our current setbacks. And so we are looking on a much broader.
I'd feel much better doing it with Ivory if it's something that you feel good citywide.
Yes, we presented that in a study session at Planning Commission the last meeting. Hope to have it on their next agenda, re-looking at the way we look at corner lots, looking at lot width requirements. We might be more flexible in that. And then the setbacks that would be proportional to the lot widths and kind of fit in with the style a bit
Does that
more.
make sense, Kate? Maybe citywide versus just burgers.
It depends on whether you agree to do it or not. I think 5 feet is too close on an 8,000 square foot house. That sets a house 10 feet apart, which I think that's, but time to change it.
Well, there are a couple of things we'll bring up during that also, where we're talking about the bulk, you know, the wall you have against the property. At one time, the ordinance in one section of the city allowed a 5-foot setback for single-story homes and required a 10-foot for two-story. And then also, if you have large walls, should those be broken up? So it's just not this massive straight wall that you would have in side yards or rear yards or some other portion of your home. There are a couple of nuances to that we are trying to work out the final details before you see them.
Mr. Connect?
So it seems like, help me out here, almost apples and oranges. When you say that you've got an easement for utilities, that's different to me than saying the setback for the property, a house has to be 10 feet from the property line.
Right, the easements were kind of put into the original ordinance in 2009, and it talked about those easements in there, but since that's time, there's been a real question as to not even using side yard easements. They're really not used. They come through, the power comes through the front or the back or something like that. And so, you know, the only reason for that setback originally is because the easements were dictated out in that 2009 ordinance. Is that, did that answer your question?
Well, in a normal subdivision, you're talking like a 10-foot setback, and in this one, the distance between the homes is going to be how much?
10 feet. Could be up as little as 10 feet.
Okay, well, I've seen
Plus
that.
roof overhang could take 2 foot each one, so now we're down to 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
You pop out a foundation over, you can get another foot there, so now we can go down to 4 feet.
You'd be a lot closer.
And if it snows and the ice goes over, you might have an ice bridge.
Yeah, the cat burglars are going to love it.
Now we have the other slides that show the setbacks, the comparative setbacks on the one we did with Planning Commission, but it was on this one, so I apologize. Maybe I need to include that on council.
One follow-up. So Franklin neighborhood, when they came in for their neighborhood plan, we had a separate meeting with the ones on First South. You know, they didn't really want to change the general plan, but they did want to be able to improve their homes and expand their homes. And some of those old homes on the small lots are 5 feet away. And our current ordinance does not allow them to practically and properly expand their house. And they wanted that changed, but I've not seen anything in the works. How do we get that?
That's one of the ones coming through, that these changes would apply to those neighborhoods. A lot of the pioneer neighborhoods, that's exactly the issue, because almost every lot's non-conforming in some aspect. And, you know, they come in to add on to their home to stay in the area. You're always dealing with those non-conformities. We feel that would free it up quite a bit. And maybe the contrast would be by the homes that are on the west side of the Mazer, old Mazer School. You can see those, and if you go out there, I guess in our mind, they're separated. They look wrong. You know, the proportion distance between the homes just doesn't feel right. Whereas if you go down here on 4th South with the homes which were done, blanking out the things, it's just
Provo housing?
Provo housing. Well, it's Crown Homes. Thank you. The Crown Homes, you can see the proportion of those setbacks, which gets into the 5-foot setbacks and different things that way. And this is I guess a planning thing, but it looks more correct proportionally than what the other ones do. It's a sense of feel, and I wouldn't disagree with the other two. Your neighbor's definitely closer to you.
Thank you. Appreciate your presentation. We have 2 more presentations, and we'll probably just have time just enough for them to present, and then we'll have to ask their questions later. Thank you for
Our next item is a discussion on a request by Adam Hall for a zone change from residential conservation to low-density residential to facilitate a 3-lot subdivision for property located at approximately 1080 West, 500 North, and Dustin Wright will be presenting.
Thank you. So these are 2 properties that the applicant owns. They're residential single-family lots. They're very deep lots. They're narrow and deep, which is something we see a lot of. And so what they're requesting to do is on the back portion of these 2 lots is to divide them off from these and create a 3rd lot, parcel 3. And to do so, the current zone that they're in is the RC zone. It doesn't allow for a new lot to be created, and that's what the intention that a new zone would be determined to be the most appropriate for that. So they're requesting for a low-density residential zone to be able to create this 3rd parcel. Some of the concerns that might be presented if that's rezoned would be that So they're only requesting to have the 3 lots and the 3 single-family homes. But with that zone, there's potential for there to be more lots. And so the applicant has agreed to enter into a development agreement with the city to limit those lots, or these 2 lots, to just become the 3 lots, and that there would only be a single-family home on each lot. So that's the development agreement that they've offered. And with that, the Planning Commission has given their recommendation to the council to approve this rezone with that development agreement in place to ensure that it's just those 3 lots that will fit into the neighborhood character of a single-family neighborhood. So are there any questions?
What are the surrounding lots? What size are they?
So on the north, this R2 PD zone, it has some smaller lots than what you typically see in just a regular residential single-family lot. But everything around it, down here, I'm not seeing what the zone is. Oh, it's R16A, so these are minimum 6,000 square foot lots. If we look at these, parcel 3 would be the smallest. It would be over 6,000 square feet.
Comparable to us.
Yeah, so technically it would almost fit in the R16 zone, except for the lot frontage is only 55 feet. And I think it needs 60 feet to be able to meet that zone. And that's to give enough space for some of the existing structures that are on these 2 lots. As you can see, there's a garage on this one, and so they want to be able to maintain a setback from the garage to the property line, which we think is good. So that's probably the main reason why the LDR zone is more accommodating to this specific site. It's just for those lot width requirements to be met.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. I appreciate your presentation. Sorry to cut it a little bit short. We have one more to get in before we have some administrative items and then close meeting. So we will hear from Mr. Maxwell or Mr. Smith. Okay, Mr. Mills will be discussing this last item, a discussion on a request by Brian Dabb on an ordinance text amendment to section 4.3 to allow 6 foot solid fencing within the front setback in residential zones.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, this is a zoning, an ordinance text amendment request. The applicant submitted this to allow essentially to be able to, for a property owner to be able to deduct the park strip area in front of their home from the front yard setback requirement. And so essentially what that would do is, for instance, if a homeowner had a 10-foot park strip in front of their home, they could then deduct that from the 20-foot front setback requirement and essentially move things as the fence that would be a 6-foot solid wall fence or a hedge or something like that to allow that to be closer to into the front yard area. There's a couple examples that I have in this slide. So these are some examples of what is currently allowed by the ordinance. These are just in the neighborhood. The front yard, within a front yard, a solid wall or fence has to be no higher than 3 feet for the first 20 feet back from the sidewalk. And then it can extend to be taller. If the fence is actually non-site obscuring, which means more than 50% open, then it can be 6 feet in height, and it can extend the full length into the front yard requirement. This would allow, this ordinance amendment would actually allow something like this to be 6 feet in height, extending all the way, or a matter of deducting whatever park strip length this is, then it could encroach farther into the 20-foot required setback. To kind of give an example, there are, I'm sure, many examples throughout the city of Provo. This happens to be the applicant's property. To give an example of what would be allowed by this, this park strip is approximately 20 feet wide, and so the applicant would be able to deduct this distance from what would normally be set back 3 feet to the 20-foot area. And so this ordinance amendment would allow this current wall to be legally established there. The department had several concerns with this particular ordinance amendment. We felt that there would be some undesirable consequences of this, and we recommended that the Planning Commission forward a denial recommendation. They did that. They unanimously forwarded that. I'm available for any questions. Also, the applicant is here if you have any questions for him as well.
The Planning Commission unanimously wanted to deny?
That's correct.
Will you have to alter the fence to comply?
They further forwarded a recommendation that the applicant be given an additional 6 months in order to come into compliance. Any further questions?
We're going to take questions, but I feel bad because the applicant is here, so we do maybe have a minute if there was one more question someone wanted to ask.
Thank you.
So the next item is administrative updates, and Mr. Parker, do you want to?
Sure, thank you. I wanted to bring you up to speed on some discussions that have been underway the last couple of months. We were advised about 60 days ago that the ownership of the Boulders apartment complex was potentially under change. That the current owners had received an offer from a management group in California to purchase the Boulders apartments and to make a substantial investment. There last week, the Private Activity Bond Board, on which I sit representing the Utah League of Cities and Towns, voted to authorize $30 million in tax-exempt financing to supplement what will end up being a $50 million investment in the Boulders. The property will be purchased for just about $24 million from the existing owners. The tax credits will transfer to the new owners, which they will remarket. That, combined with owner's equity and some construction financing, will create about a $50 million investment. We have met now twice with the president of the new ownership group. It's a group called Reliant Group out of San Francisco, and we can get you information from them. They're anticipating a total renovation of most of the units in the complex, including replacement interior and exterior, so all new windows, all new siding, new vapor barriers, new HVAC systems, replacing toilets, water heaters, appliances. They'll be pretty well gutting the individual units. Their budget's about $55,000 per unit in terms of the anticipated renovations that they'll bring. They've also met, and the main thing I wanted to communicate to you is that they've been making an outreach effort in the community. And last week, I actually was invited to a meeting with United Way and Wasatch Mental Health and the new owners to talk about the community center and programming efforts and what those who provide services in that area to tenants would like to see in terms of renovation. They came in with they're going to take down the existing leasing office and clubhouse and replace it in its entirety. There will be a large fitness center, a significantly larger group room than exists currently in the community center, and they are proposing to contract with United Way to program all the activities in the new clubhouse as well as in the community center. They're willing to accept in full measure all of the obligations that the old owners had relative to the South Franklin Community Center. As you'll remember, that's a multi-jurisdictional public-private partnership, and they've agreed to continue the existing arrangement that we have with the current ownership group. They'll be renovating the soccer field that exists there across the street from the community center so that it can be really effectively used. They'll replace the basketball court and the standards. Probably going to keep the pool, but they'll replace all of the other amenities associated with that. It was actually probably one of the best good news stories we've had in quite a while. So again, they're a very activist group. They own 49 other similar projects around the West. This will be their first Utah project, but they own projects in California, Nevada, Washington, Oregon, Arizona, where they've invested in similar kinds of either low-income housing tax credit projects or otherwise. They're a pretty activist group. They know exactly what they're getting into. So it would appear they ask all the right questions. And so we just wanted to let you know before you saw something developing relative to the LIHTC credits or the tax-exempt bonding that they've been successful. I should mention that there were 9 projects submitted to the Private Activity Bond Board this time. Only 6 of those were funded, and the Boulders rehab and renovation was the #1 ranked project across all of those submitted in this cycle. So it was funded in its entirety. And essentially everything they asked for, they got from the Private Activity Bond Board. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on that. Again, next opportunity we have when we can get Joe Sherman, who's the president of Reliant Group here in town, we'll try to set up some opportunities for you to meet with them now that their plans are getting a little more cemented and but they've again retained architect, contractor, and they're getting ready to go. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on those discussions as they've been occurring in recent weeks.
What was your financial incentive to do this?
Well, obviously they like the tax credit opportunity. They can sell those for a 10% premium. So
there's new tax credit?
New tax credits, right. So the tax credit restarts, and then the tax exempt bonding on top of that, and so that's what's motivating them. So again, we've looked at their cash flow statements. A lot of that material was presented to the Private Activity Board last week, and again, very favorably reviewed. So the Utah Housing Corporation will actually be doing the bond issuance, and we'll be issuing the low-income housing tax credits. So it'll be done again. And we've met Utah Housing Corporation folks here in meetings before. So, but again, they're not creating any net new units. And again, a pretty significant upgrade, I think, to living conditions in the Boulders, which I think is a pretty good story. So, Councilman Connect.
It'll be more effectively managed.
It will be more effectively managed. They've committed that they will not have rotating managers every 6 months. We'll have a long-term commitment there. They're anxious to be as involved as we would like them to be in our South Franklin community partnership and all the other things that we've been doing. So they did bring their new on-site manager with them at this most recent meeting, and so they've already selected somebody who will be assigned to the Boulders and working once they finalize their ownership. They anticipate closing on the bonds about the 1st of July, so that'll be about the time when this whole project gets underway.
Did you change in the residential mix, you think? And will that be because of management? What's going to change that mix?
Well, there probably won't be a lot of change in the mix. I mean, they're not building any new units. They're not trying to create, take 1 bedrooms and make them 2 or 2 and make them 1. So I think they're kind of living with the size and scale of the box in which the resident sits. So that probably doesn't change very much. There's still a lot of 1 bedroom and studio apartments there, so it's not going to change that too much. But again, their reputation in the industry is pretty good. We try to do some checking with other entities with whom they've worked, and again, I think in terms of better quality management, a little greater focus, and again, a significant investment. One of the things they said, for example, in all of their projects is that they've come in and installed a significant fitness center component. And they said it's amazing what you can do with residents who all of a sudden now have positive endorphins getting released. We have a lot fewer fights and we have a lot fewer challenges because people have a place to go get physically active. That's not been the case at Boulders up to this point. They'll also be putting washers and dryers in every unit, which those of you who've been involved with the Boulders know that the laundromat has been a significant source of conflict and battle and crime and other things, and the laundromat will actually be going away with this development. They'll be putting washer and dryer units in individual apartments.
Just want to say this sounds like pretty awesome news.
It is really awesome news. We're excited that we thought for a long time there was not going to be an opportunity to ever make this kind of change, and But again, you had a group who was paying attention, looking for investment opportunity. And I do have to tell you, it was so refreshing to me to walk the site with the president of the company early on, and for him to say, this place is a real slum, isn't it? Compared to what we used to hear from the prior owners who said this is one of the nicest properties they managed. So that alone gave me confidence and hope that some good thing might come out of this. So anyway, so that's all, and I'd be happy to share more details as they become available.
Administration gets all the credit, right?
Of course, yeah, we did it all. But I'll tell you that the partnership that has been developed among the social service agencies and the owners of the boulders, I think, was very exciting to them. They were pleased to know that we were aware of what's going on, that we were engaged, and that we sit together once a quarter with Intermountain Healthcare, the school district, and the Scouts organization, and United Way, and Wasatch Mental Health, and the police and fire departments, and all of those who, community action, all those who offer services there to collaborate and coordinate efforts. And that, in their view, that's unheard of in their world. And this idea of the partnership with the community center that had, Habitat built it, Housing Authority designed it, United Way programs it, the city owns the building, the private owners of boulders cover all the repairs, improvements, utilities, all of those aspects of it. That's, again, something that they said is unprecedented in their world. And so they were really excited to come to Provo and felt like they had a really solid base on which to build what they're doing. So that's the latest. So thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. And that was Reliant.
It's called Reliant Group.
Reliant.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So there has been a closed meeting requested and
Yes. So there has been a request for a closed meeting. There's been an update. We'd like to present to the council, and it does have to do with one of the some impending or imminent litigation, which is one of the sorts of reasons for closing the meeting. So in order to have that presentation, it'd be appropriate this time for motion to close.
So Mr. Van Buren, is there a second?
Second, but also wondered if I could be appropriate.
Yes, and we will be meeting in the other conference room, so take that 5-minute break on the way to the other room down the hall. And all in favor? Yes. Unanimous. Mr. Livingston, are you still there, Mr. Winterton?
This is the slide presentation.
We didn't talk into the microphone.
Jerry, are you still on the phone? Did you hear the motion to close the meeting?
Okay. That was about 6 hours.
We'll do that.